She forgot that this was happening.
Welcome, everyone. It's an enthusiastic.
I should not be laughing.
That'll fix it. Okay. Just spread it all over all the machines and
You
they'll
want me to
start
get you
working.
some paper towels?
She just gets so excited.
I broke two one last night and one this morning.
You what?
I broke two
My whole screen.
last night and this morning.
What?
Just like fell out of my
Stay
hands.
home.
Okay. Are we ready to go? Welcome, everyone, to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session today on Tuesday, May 27th. And we are going to start our meeting today with the Board of County Commissioners sitting as the Board of Social Services. And we do formal action items as we sit as the Board of Social Services. So I'm going to call a special meeting for that purpose. And I will turn it over to our Human Services team if you are all ready. Are you ready? All right, this is Lindsay Maish, our Human Services Director.
Thank you. Thanks
Greetings,
for the
everyone.
introduction.
Welcome.
Yeah, thank you. So we're here today, May 27th, 2025, to do our first quarter update. I'd just like to give a little bit of context before I dive into the numbers. So before we go there, as you all know, Colorado is a state supervised, county administered human services system. We're responsible for all activities provided by local and district human services departments. And along with those, we're also responsible for those allocations and expenditures. The state relies on each of you, each Board of County Commissioners, to serve as the Board of Social Services. It's written into statute to oversee all of the social services activities that address economic assistance and welfare duties, responsibilities, and activities of our department. In Pickens County, most of our services are primarily, we provide most of our services. However, we do still have contracts that exist. Specifically, we have a contract with Garfield County Human Services to provide child support services, and also our long-term care support services. There are some other mandated services provided through contracts or intergovernmental agreements. That includes our LEAP eligibility determination, which is provided by the Goodwill Incorporated, and Child and Adult Protection Hotline Services, which is provided by Prowers County. And for right now, we're also contracting with Eagle County to carry out our CCAP duties as well. We had a resignation, and because we're so small and we're typically generalists, that one person held all of the information. So we moved really swiftly and quickly to work with Eagle County. It's something that we've historically done in the past, is kind of lean on one another when we have these vacancies or openings. And they've agreed to help us out for a few months. So until we get hired up and retrained again, we will be working with Eagle County on all of our child care assistance program eligibility programs. So for today, we're going to go over the 2025 calendar year budget, first quarter. You'll be looking at our allocations. The way that you look at them in this, though, is that they follow the state fiscal year, which is January to, well, right now this quarter is January to March. Sometimes when we get to the second half of the year, you might see some interesting things happen in our allocation, and that's mostly because we're following just a different, we follow the calendar year, whereas the state is following a different fiscal year. So today we're going to review the first quarter, January 2025, January to March budget expenditure reports and payrolls. I already went through this, so... All right, so I will take this. I will speak a little bit to our budget versus actuals. So starting at the top here with admin and economic assistance, the first quarter revenue is actually higher, which is compared to our first quarter of 2024. 31% compared to 27%. 2025 Q1 expenditures are significantly lower than our last year. important to note that Q1 expenditures as a percentage are more in line with the percentage of the year completed, which is about 25%. So what Stuart is trying to say here is that we're getting closer and closer every year to matching up our expenditures and our revenues, and so that they're actually tracking to each quarter. What you may have seen in the past was we sometimes blow it out of the water in a first quarter or a second quarter, and what we're starting to see, and I think this is mostly in part to Stuart, our finance analyst's support, is that we're getting much closer in terms of how we're drawing down the dollars, how often we're doing it, to have that be matching our actual programs and services. Does that make sense? Okay.
Is there a reason for that change, like an accounting change at all?
We have a really savvy finance analyst who's very knowledgeable about how to do budgeting and knowing when, like I said, to pull down those numbers from our CFMS, the programs that we use to pull our allocations, and as well as helping us. He's been meeting with us monthly now to review our budgets and say, look, there's a big gap here, or did you know that you haven't spent this part down yet? And that kind of gets our eye towards the programs and services as well. So probably those changes, but I don't have data to support that. Okay, so next on here is the TANF, also in the state of Colorado. It's called Colorado Works, the Temporary Assistance for Needy Families. First quarter 2025 revenue received, it's identical to last year's, except our expenditures this time period are much lower. Expenditures are expected to increase in the upcoming months because of the contracts that we have with the Aspen Youth Center and the Cottage Daycare for summer camp programs. So we'll see those TANF dollars or the Colorado Works dollars spike in our next quarter. So you'll see that come through in our Q2 report out. It should also be noted that multiple households are no longer qualifying for Colorado Works because they're now self-sufficient. Thus, expenditures for this program are going to continue to be low. So to qualify for TANF, it's pretty hard. So if you are working full-time in this area, you wouldn't be eligible for some of the programs like basic cash assistance and things like that. Okay, any questions? All right, I'm going to keep rolling then. All right, so Child Care Assistance Program, both our revenue and expenditures year to date for child care are significantly improved to the same time last year. So if you recall, from COVID until about 2023, we were seeing very low usage in child care assistance. Families weren't going to child care for a while. And then we were also seeing some gaps as well in terms of who's qualifying and then how much we're paying our providers. In the last year, we updated our payment plan. We're now paying providers more than we were before, as well as we raised the FPL for CCAP to 300%. So that also brought on quite a few more families. So we're just seeing better use of these funds. Thank goodness. We didn't love to give that money up at the end of the year. So we're just seeing a better use of that now. Child welfare. Okay. Revenue expenditures through first quarter are significantly improved compared to the same time last year, much more in line with percentage of year completed. An improvement in timely billing from outside counsel has been one source of improvement in expenditures year to date. So up until last year, we used our internal attorney team to support us in child welfare legal court issues. And was it last year? Just last year, we started contracting with an outside legal counsel who bills us very regularly for those services, whereas before we were getting some just inconsistency in the invoicing and billing from our internal department. So we're seeing that be used a lot better now. Adult protection. So we're experiencing an increase in revenue for Q1 of 2025. Expenditures for the same time period are more in line with the percentage of the year completed. The discrepancy between the percentage for actual revenue received and actual expenditure is just, can be, bless you, can be explained by the amount budgeted. So the amount of expenditures budget for APS is more than 2 times the amount budgeted for revenues. Because of this difference, it can make the revenue received as a percentage that seems much higher. Okay, child support service.
Why is it budgeted that way?
So we, our allocation for adult protection is almost an unfunded mandate, I would say. So we get very little, so we have to budget the right amount for the salary of the position and how that, and just how that comes through for us. So it, some of the revenues are kind of unexplained. Like sometimes the state will give us more at a certain time period than another time period. It's just an interesting way that we end up getting the allocations. So sometimes it's just variances as well. Okay, child support services. So this is Garfield County. They do all of our child support services. Their revenue for Q1 is in line with the percentage of the year completed and significantly improved compared to last year. They saw a significant increase in expenditures spent for Q1 of 2025 as well. So they're also using that money. That's good. So as in terms of just our total programs, the revenues from all of our allocations for first quarter are at 26%, which is pretty darn close to 25%. So we're excited about that. And our expenditures are at about 20% of budget, both of which are in line with the percentage of the year completed. And we'll probably see that be actually even more close with the Colorado Works and some of the contracts that we'll fulfill through this summer for our second quarter. So get ready for that. Any questions?
I'm not seeing it. Oh, Jeffrey.
And you could say you're going to come to it, but you're going to do a legislative update and end of year wrap up?
It's been really hard for me to not talk about some of those in that capacity right now. Yeah, we're going to come back to just kind of what we're anticipating and what we're seeing and some of the things we're doing to plan around those things.
Yeah, that was not a pleasant read in this part of the packet. So
no, it's looking
and if
grim.
you read my notes and read, you'd be like, yeah, that's pretty spot on.
Yeah, it's just looking a little grim for public health and human services out there.
Yeah, my concern really, if there was a question, was really additional reporting without additional revenue.
Yeah,
was a polite way of putting it, I guess.
Mm-hmm, that's right. Yeah, more unfunded mandates for us. Yeah.
Thank you for spelling that out.
Yep. One of the questions that I actually had for you, board, was, we historically have not put senior services in this budget because it's not statutorily required. But we did, as we were going through our presentation, we were just looking at it and wondering if that was something that you all would like to see in this report out, because we're unique in Pickens County that we have a senior services under human services. It doesn't usually live in that space. So we're happy to bring those numbers for you all as well each quarter, but just wanted to check and see if that was something that would be of interest to you all.
Jeffrey.
And I think you're raising that because that's probably the piece that's at the largest risk. Potentially.
Maybe.
Okay.
Yep.
Fair.
Yep. We'll get into that a bit, but yeah. Mm-hmm.
And to answer your question, yeah, I would like to see it broken out because it plays back into, I think the earlier appropriation was for either the CSA or something else, so the sort of emergency resolutions. It'd be nice if we're watching it from a dashboard standpoint, and then we say, oh, this is what's changed when we get the mid-cycle funding request.
We do receive grants in senior services that help to pay for the nutrition program, and they are federally fed through the state. So it is one of, you're right, one of the reasons we're wondering if that would be of interest as we are anticipating some changes there in the future.
Definitely.
I just would say maybe format it out in a way where it's sort of obvious it's separate, just because we, the next thing that we look at where we have to approve is the expenditures that match very nicely to this budget layout, and we don't want to sort of confuse the two.
Yep.
Is there any other comment on that? Okay. Jeffrey?
And again, you could table this, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this board's role vis-a-vis Adam Fox and Protect Our Care Colorado and some of the other potential changes that we're facing. So as we're looking at 2025-2026 legislative session, where do you want this board to be more vocal? Who should we be pairing up with in the community? It seems like CCAT's an obvious partner with Julia and Thomas and potentially Adam Fox through Protect Our Care Colorado. But I throw that out to all of you, which is, what else would you like to see in terms of advocacy from this board as we look forward to both 25, 26 bills, but also potential changes that will impact the budget? So, and again, you could table that if you're
Gonna
coming to
table
another
that.
slide.
Yeah. Yeah, I think just in response right now, we don't know much right now. But I have a sense in the next year we'll know a lot more in terms of what the role of the board and our community could be in some of those discussions that are happening. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the next. So now we're going to look at our first quarter expenditures. This breaks it out by direct client benefits, administrative costs, and overhead. So what you're going to see here is it's somewhat in alignment, but you'll see some variance in these numbers. And this is just showing you in Q1 what we see for admin and economic assistance, Colorado Works, and this is, remember, direct client benefits and then overhead. So you can almost see in these numbers a little bit like we do not get a lot of we don't get Colorado Works administrative overhead. That's a program that's going out for basic cash assistance, direct client benefits, and that way like I said, with the contracts, you'll see that jump in the next quarter. But some of these things are just explanatory in terms of it's part of the bigger number that you're seeing. Any questions?
There's no questions on this slide. Can I please have a motion to approve the first quarter expenditures?
So moved.
Thank you, Francie. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so the second part is to talk about the first quarter economic services or our public benefits programs, direct services, payrolls, and I'm going to hand that over to Norma to speak to. You want to get the mic
Yeah,
here?
you'll need a mic, and the red light is on.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I am Norma Avila. I am the manager Economic Assistance Division. If you can see the payroll year today for the first quarter 2025, the enrollment for the aid to the needed disabled, it's stable right now, and there's two active cases only. The participation remained low, primarily due to the program stringent income other resources eligibility criteria. That's what we have in that program right now. In the Colorado Child Care Assistance Program, the CCAP, right now we can see a growth that happened, the double from quarter for 2024. As you remember, in November, we did the poverty level, it went up to 300. So we started on November 2024. And right now we can see more cases and more help to the community. So it double the number, the amount that we're helping our clients. The old age pension program, we did receive 12 applications for this quarter, and there's only 4 active cases at this moment. The overall financial disbursement has decreased, and it's because of the income and resources as well that is received. Any questions before I move forward? No. The LEAP program. The LEAP program for the first quarter of 2024, we did receive 53 applications. In the first quarter for 2025, we received 142 applications. And the LEAP season, as you know, it runs from November throughout the way to April. So the increased outreach in the targeting of advertising in Spanish and English has been successful. And we did receive 91 applications only for the month of March. So it was great. We did advertising for January 2025. Colorado Works, this is down. This quarter went down from quarter 2024. And as Lindsay explained, because the eligibility limits that we have, but we still have assistance remaining to help our clients with rent and utilities if they apply and depending their event, what's going on at that time. SNAP, we have the SNAP. We received, for the first quarter of 2025, we received 58 food assistance applications. And that is for regular SNAP. For expedited, we did receive 36 expedited food assistance. It has been increased, the benefit insurance, primarily due to the report changes in household income or ongoing inflation effects on the budgets. We also have a transition right now, effective May 1st, 2025. Lift Up will not longer be a food distribution in our building anymore. And starting June 1st, Harvest for the Hunger will be our new distribution partner, and they're the ones that are going to start. They will have expanding their hours from Monday to Friday, 8 to 5. Any questions?
I'm going to add one notable thing here, which is food assistance, SNAP. If you look at 2023 at that number, that was when folks were still locked in to their because of the public health emergency. So we're now starting to see some rates. It's going up. So we're seeing some more food need and more people being eligible now to qualify, even with going back to the pre-public health emergency eligibility limits. So in one way, it's great that we're seeing that be used, and in another, it definitely brings up a question mark for us around food security in our area.
Lindsay, what happens to the Colorado Works funds if they reduce like that?
So what's interesting about our Colorado Works is that we usually fully expend the allocation. So one of the things that the state is looking at right now is basic cash assistance and increasing in that. And in most of the resort areas, that doesn't help us much because basic cash assistance, to be eligible for that, is pretty tough. It's pretty tough to get into that program. So you see these kind of low amounts here. And then we do have the flexibility to support the community through Colorado Works in different ways, like with contracts to help with like summer camps, right, for low-income families and things like that. So we have other ways to be able to use that. So I guess that's the long-winded way of saying I'm not really sure what would happen if we continue to see the decrease in basic cash assistance, because at the state level, we're just not hearing that that's being recognized through the resort areas.
Okay. The eligibility isn't expanding.
No, not. If anything, it might get worse.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on payrolls? If not, can I please have a motion to approve first quarter payrolls?
Moved.
Seconded.
Nancy, thank you, Jeffrey. Any further questions or discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, Norma.
All right. So we're going to jump around in the memo a little bit. We first want you all to see our new staff. We have 3 new staff that has joined the Human Services team. Megan Perlman is now working at Senior Services as the admin specialist. Marlene Gonzalez de Calkins, right? Did I say that right? Calkins? Mm-hmm. Is a child welfare caseworker, as well as Tara Freeman. So we're excited to bring some new faces onto our team and see what their experience brings and their perspectives. Had to do that shout out. Okay, so before I start to get into contingency planning, the federal funding landscape and things like that, I just want to mention that at our last meeting, Patty, you had asked to get an update on veteran services. So at the end of this, we'll do some updates here, and then I'm going to hand it over to Adam, who will give us a kind of a full update of the last year, some of the things he's been up to, and what's going on.
Great, thanks.
So before we get there, though, I will start by telling you about the contingency planning that we're doing right now. And in fact, it's changed since I made this presentation, which seems to be what's happening a lot these days, is that things keep changing by the day. So there are some things that are staying pretty consistent, though, since the very beginning. And the areas that we're most worried about right now, and you've probably seen the big, beautiful bill that has passed through the House and has now moved on to the Senate, there are some pretty big implications for human services and our communities as a result of some of those, essentially, their budget cuts. In the broad picture. So the big areas that we're focusing on and starting to lean into doing some planning around is healthcare and Medicaid, almost all of our public assistance programs. I think Norma's department is one that we're the most worried about right now. Of course, the adult and aging programs and nutrition, and then the immigration policies that are coming through. And just to add one more to this as well, we've, in that bill, there's some information about early Head Start and early intervention programs, which if that gets cut to our region, we could see some pretty big impacts for kids who need, for children and families who need that additional support. So in those areas, I'll start with healthcare. So as we're seeing, it looks like a rollback of the Affordable Care Act, which then affects that Medicaid expansion. So it's kind of bringing it back to what it was pre the Affordable Care Act. One of the ways that they're looking at it is through work requirements, which I'm sure you've also heard a little bit about. And I just want to, one of the things I want to hit on is the impact this will have to us as a department and to our community as well. So if we see these kinds of changes around work requirements, or another thing they're looking at is doing redeterminations more often, like every 3 months or every 6 months, and that goes for our SNAP program, and that's kind of what we're all of these public benefits are up in the air around how they're going to be managed. Unfortunately for us, our jobs get busier. Because the more redeterminations we have, that's more interviews, that's more work that we're having to do, and Jeffrey, to your point, with no additional funding to help support some of those initiatives. At least we're not seeing that right now tied to the current bill that's going through. So we're worried in those areas. We're pretty certain we're going to be losing. Well, I'm going to knock on wood and say there is the potential to lose some of the grants that we have that have historically helped fund some of the positions in economic services, specifically our community services block grant. CSBG is one that's looking a little uncertain right now. Also, we've historically gotten grants through our allocation or through other areas, like every year they ask us, do you want this kind of additional money? The state will ask us, do you want this additional money to help get LEAP out into your community, LEAP outreach, these different efforts, as well as we have a different grant for SNAP to do the same kind of thing. And if we see those go away, that's just going to impact our staffing and our FTE counts. So we're looking at that. Adult and aging programs. Interestingly, Chad and I are hearing different things right now around this. I'm on the one hand in some of my state and federal updates, hearing that adult protection is going to be, we're going to see some big cuts to adult protection, which at this point we're essentially, it's almost an unfunded mandate. I think we get like $40,000 a year through our allocation for that or something like that, which we have historically backfilled through child welfare, which is kind of an interesting thing to have an adult protection worker who also does child welfare, because they're two very different things. We're also expecting, as we see SNAP cuts and nutrition programs being cut, we're funded. A lot of our senior center nutrition program, the lunch program, is funded through a grant through the Alpine Area on Aging, AAA. And Chad is hearing that should be protected at least through the next year, and I'm hearing that it could not be protected as well. So we're kind of looking at that and anticipating potential changes there. And then, of course, we're doing a lot of planning around some of the immigration policies with the schools and just making sure that kids are safe and families are safe in the current landscape. So, Human Services is doing a little bit of a reorganization right now with us thinking that we're going to see some cuts to public benefits. We're going to be moving our Child Care Assistance Program, CCAP, over to our Child Welfare Family Services team. It's twofold. It's programmatic, but it's also there's a fiscal reason as well. So the programmatic parts of this are that we have historically, our child welfare team hasn't been as connected to early childhood providers in the past. So there's just kind of a programmatic question mark that we have around that we're wanting to pilot and understand a little bit better. And then the fiscal part of this is that, and every time I say this out loud, I have to knock on wood, is that child welfare historically has been an allocation that has been pretty stable. And as you know, in the last couple of years, we have seen that actually increase for us to the tune of more than 2 positions. So as we're watching, and we're not hearing much, I'm not hearing much about in the federal updates or the state updates about child welfare. So that feels like a little bit of a more sturdy department right now in Human Services. It also, every year, the state closes us out for child welfare. We have not owed money back. We almost overspend all of our allocations because salaries, cost of living, things like that are just really high here. We have not owed money back to the state on our child welfare programs as long as I've been here. So the state, what they do is that at the end of the year, they look at all of the allocations, the counties that are underspent, the counties that are overspent, and they close us out, which is a really nice way to maximize our allocations. So feels a little more sturdy. We can backfill that with some of what I'm going to talk about here in a second, which is moving our adult protection services over to senior services.
Before you go into that,
Yeah.
I'd like to just ask a question. I guess understanding the child welfare program are you getting more referrals for school-age children? Like, do you expect to perhaps, through connecting better with early childhood providers, receive more referrals through that age
No, I think
group?
that we probably get an adequate amount of referrals, like what's reasonable. What we're really hoping is just to tighten up those relationships so that we can provide support to families when they come to us and actually need some support.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay.
I don't think so. Thank you.
All right, so adult protection, moving to senior services. And one of the reasons, so we consider senior services a local mandate. And the reason we call it a local mandate is because it's supported through things like our local mill levy tax, like the Healthy Community Fund. Our local dollars are much more stable right now than federal dollars. So we're kind of looking at the places where we have some more local support and trying to place positions where they both programmatically make sense. Like we wouldn't put CCAP in senior services, like that probably wouldn't make sense, but adult protection is certainly an area where senior services is really seen as like a very robust prevention program. And if we can get some of our adult protection clients connected to that area, we may see better outcomes. And there's one other thing I was going to say about APS. And now I'm forgetting what it was. So I guess I'll leave it there. Oh, the other thing is that senior services staff are, Dr. Chad Fedowitz has a doctorate in gerontology. When we looked at the data of the number of adult protection cases that are referred, that are over 60, I think in the last 5 years, it's like over 90% of the referrals are individuals that are over 60. They also, we consider them subject matter experts for things like access and functional needs, people who are living with disabilities, things like that. So by placing this program there, it surrounds that staff person with people and with subject matter experts, essentially, who can help support that staff person, versus them being in child welfare, where it's just a little bit more fragmented, I think.
Can I have a question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So, Chad's hearing one thing about nutritional services. You're kind of hearing, what is Vintage? Have you heard?
Vintage is AAA. So
That's what I'm saying is, did we
So
change the name
he's
back
hearing,
again?
what's interesting is he's hearing it from Vintage and I'm hearing it from my federal and state calls. So we're kind of hearing some different things.
Vintage is saying it's hands off for now.
Mhm.
Interesting, because
Yep.
that's interesting.
Yeah, they're feeling, we just had an audit last week or 2 weeks ago from Vintage. And when we met with them, they said they're feeling pretty good about this next year, but not so sure about the year after that.
And then if we needed, which we did for the CSA program to backfill that, if we move senior services, adult protection, if we move adult protection into senior services because we have more stable funding, can we not use the stable funding for senior services to help backfill our nutrition
We
program?
would, yeah, we would. That's the plan.
That's a really key issue for me.
That's to answer the question that you had, is even though we're seeing instability in the aging and the adult and aging areas, I think one of the reasons we're unique is that because our budget right now would allow us to be able to backfill that.
Okay.
We often go and find grants to help offset our budget, right, to try to kind of
Right.
fill that gap between what our Human Services Fund, the general fund, is helping with to address the kind of salaries, incomes, and all of that kind of stuff, cost of living. So we actually feel much better about senior services.
We just have to be concerned about where grants may be going to, our opportunity. We've always relished in the fact we were able to get all these great grants, and that's an uncertainty too. But I think it's really critical when we're talking food security, especially for seniors, to have that nutrition program. And the other thing, when we did backfill for just this year, the CSA for Seniors program, one of the requests in that was that we look for sustainable funding for that year's out. So
Yep.
that we need to keep that in our conversation to get a head start on it. So at the end of the year, we're not going, oh, how are we going to fund it for next year, without having to come back to the county general fund.
Right.
Right.
I think we are planning to come back to you in the next few months on the Healthy Community Fund with some recommendations to narrow in on what you're saying about
Actually, we
the
did take it out,
funding
Healthy
and-
Community Fund emergency reserves.
Yeah, that was something I learned about that we
Yeah,
used to
that's
do.
where it
We
came
had
from. Thank
emergency
you.
reserves, yeah.
Yeah.
So I did a deep dive into the Healthy Community Fund and learned a lot that I didn't know, and we plan to bring some recommendations back for you all to review and see what we look at, because we're going to ballot next year,
Yeah.
again, for the Healthy Community Fund, so,
No, yep,
yeah.
biggie. Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions? We're going to do a couple of really quick divisional updates just because we want to show off our staff and the good work that's happening. So I'll start here with Economic Services. Norma, this is your slide, so you can talk a little bit about our LEAP program.
Yes. So, sorry. For the 2024 to 2025 LEAP season, which concluded on April 30th, Pekin County received the total of 180 applications for the LEAP program. As a part of the LEAP Outreach Incentive Program plan, Pekin County set the goal to increase the number of applications by 10% comparing the previous season. This goal was successfully archived, reflecting both the effectively and the county outreach effort and its ongoing to commitment and support vulnerable residents during the colder months. So we received 180. We met our 10% over the previous season, and the goal was successfully met from November to April. Any questions?
That's great.
That is great.
And part of this, most of the media campaign is what is helping us a lot to increase those numbers as well.
Thank you.
We're looking at turning to more media campaigns instead of holding events, because we're finding just through clicks and understanding that data that we're reaching way more people through media campaigns. So that's amazing, and that's partial to why we saw such a huge jump. Just got to people.
Are you guys all doing that in-house, or do you have partners that are helping you?
That
with
was some of those grants that was helping us. So LEAP is one that we get a $20,000 grant every year to help us get this out into the community. And we did we had been doing outreach. We had a person who was doing that, who also did all of our CCAP. And in that, in the loss of that person, and then also anticipating what's going to be happening, we're just looking to getting a little more strategic with our communications budget.
Is that money though? Is that going to pay for part of their time? Do you have to develop ads or just place the ads, or is it?
Yep. So it's a little bit of admin as well as just the money to get it out into the community. So whether we were doing events and buying food and like things like that, or setting up tables at other events.
But LEAP creates all the materials and you guys push them out.
Does LEAP create the materials, or do we?
No, they do
They
create.
do.
They provide those for us.
Like your mug.
What's that?
Right, like the mug.
I
right
know,
there. Yeah.
I know.
I know.
Mine's at home. I love it.
good
My
mug,
lid
right?
is missing,
My
but
family keeps taking mine away.
yeah. Yeah, Bridget wanted mine this morning too.
The other exciting thing we wanted to update you all on was we are a CSTAT Distinguished Performer this year. That's exciting. I think last year we were not, and that was probably partial to picking up some of the pieces from the public health emergency. I think there were something like 34 distinguished performers in the state of 64 counties, and we were 11th. And our neighbors in Eagle County were in 7th. So next year we're gonna win. We're gonna beat them.
You have a goal.
With their help, obviously. Okay. Really quickly, just wanted to do a quick update for senior services. The Colorado Multi-Sector Plan on Aging. It's one of the first times they've done this. It's Colorado Department of Human Services, the State Unit on Aging, and the Colorado Office of Aging, Office of Aging, released Colorado's first 10-year multi-sector plan on aging in April. You can see these goal areas right here. They're pretty well aligned with our Aging Well, our local plan. So we will be submitting feedback by the 30th. And if there's anything that you'd all like us to submit, we can send you that form as well. And then this is going to open up, we're updating our Aging Well plan this year as well. So it will definitely help drive some of that. Okay.
Can I talk a little bit about the CCAP?
Yeah, go ahead.
So Kelly, I thought I had a slide here. Sorry about that. I wanted to speak to your question a little bit more though. So with the CCAP program moving into child welfare, we're looking to strengthen those relationships. And a lot of that is because I think nationwide, about 70% of referrals that come to child welfare are for neglect. And that's things like a lack of supervision or not having enough food or being able to pay bills, et cetera, to take care of your kids. And so as we're looking at things changing funding-wise in the social safety net, I'm expecting that we'll get more referrals and a heavier workload as the years go by. And so this is a way to kind of get ahead of that, make those relationships tight so that we can support the families better.
Thank you. I think that's great. It lacks the same support system that like Aspen Family Connections provides with eyes and ears and,
Right.
in the direct schools. So, yeah, I hope that does strengthen that relationship. Thanks.
Okay. All right, so I did attach the bill tracker. There were a lot of bills, so you can go take a look at those. The one that I just wanted to bring up is the one that we continued to oppose all the way to the end. And this one was House Bill 251097, and it was really around, it was a mandate to detail transition plans for child placements in foster care. They did eventually include that it's for non-emergencies. And I can let Kelly speak a little bit to the experience of what happens when a child has to emergently move from one place to another and why this would really create a whole new workload for us. It's going to create a new workload for us because it's not, we already do plans, but not in the way that they're mandating it through this legislation. What's interesting about the legislation is that a lot of the things that we find in terms of best practices are written into rule, not into legislation. This legislation was one of the first ones where I've seen it kind of straddle that a bit and say that rule, we're gonna say that, there's actually no evidence to suggest that this is best practice. We would argue differently, and now that it's been signed into law, it's something that we're going to have to provide. So we'll keep going. When it passed the final stages, they did include a lot of amendments for us. We were hoping the bill would die, but it didn't. So with the amendments, we're feeling better, but it's still going to be a lift for us. Do you want to talk a little bit about what happens in foster care? Yep.
Sure. So normally when a child is in foster care or if we need to remove a child from their home and to go into foster care or a kinship care situation, it's generally an emergency, which means we have to do it really quickly. And we make transition plans already, that's essentially the whole process that we're going through as far as who's the child going to stay with, where are they going to school, daycare, how do we keep them in touch with relatives, things like that. And with things like the way that this was looking, it would just add in a bunch of administrative steps to kind of check the box for the things that we're already doing, which when you're in an emergency situation, trying to find placements, we don't have that time. So it's likely that a lot of counties would experience missing the check marks, but still doing really great work.
Any questions about this one?
Not seeing any.
All right. Well then, this is just, this was an overview essentially of the joint budget committee and the implications, the things that they're asking, specific of Colorado Department of Human Services, the Department of Early Childhood, and Healthcare Policy and Financing. So this just gives a really kind of broad overview of what they're looking for, and you can kind of read between this a little bit to understand what they're trying to understand, which is as we see rollbacks and cuts, where are the areas that we do have more flexibility around to be able to support other areas. So for example, TANF can be used to support child welfare activities. So if we see rollbacks in some of these other areas, how much of our TANF, fund can we use and some of those things. I think the CDEC, the Department of Early Childhood, is probably facing some of the biggest questions with all of the freezes and wait lists happening for CCAP in a lot of the Big 10 counties. We're just not families are just not getting support. And so families are not working, which means they're staying at home, and then they're not self-sufficient, and right, it just kind of snowballs into all of the work that we do. So there's a lot of questions around kind of, so the way that universal pre-K was rolled out, it did not communicate well with CCAP. So essentially there was like double billing or double providing of those funds, so that the CCAP, we were not really given adequate like reporting and things like that to know what kids are going to be in UPK. So we had to create some new processes to understand some of those things. And in the attempt to kind of like tighten up, I think we're seeing them try to understand some of that and get really clear about the direction that they'd like us to take for some of those things. And then, as you've probably heard in healthcare policy and financing, behavioral health is really struggling. They saw a $46 million cut this year in their budget, which doesn't help us much. But I think what we're starting to see in some of those cuts is a more integrated approach, where instead of having kind of like separate areas, like a separate detox and a separate behavioral health provider and a separate homeless services provider, it looks like what they're trying to do is have a lot of that absorbed into one area to try to save money on some of those things. So we're just kind of getting ready for some of those things.
Good luck.
Is universal pre-K still funded at 10 hours for 4-year-olds?
I think so. Actually, let me double check on that.
What was your question?
If universal pre-K was still funded at 10 hours a week for all 4-year-olds in the state.
I think it may have gone up.
Well, yeah, I don't know about the hours, and there's something about you can only use it once. Like, you can't do it when they're 3 and when they're 4, or when they're 4 and they're 5. Like, you can only have access to that for 1 year. So it's another, I think, area that they're like tightening up around.
Tracy just shared some information that she got, my daughter, because she has some students who are covered in her school, and there was something, and I have it highlighted here to talk to her, and of course, we were busy learning how to drive a tractor instead, so
That's far more.
we got preempted
Yeah.
on that one.
Jeffrey, did you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, can you touch on, Lindsay, the number of applications in '25? What are we seeing? I mean, I know this is more budget oriented, but so I left 2024 with 394 applications for Medicaid. SNAP was 467. Where are we today in terms of Medicaid cliff or expiring benefits? Where are we in the post-COVID world? What are the macro changes we're seeing? And so one of the takeaways I had from your numbers was like, it's close to 1,000 people in Pitkin County that are receiving some form of economic assistance.
Support, yep.
Yeah. So what are we seeing today vis-a-vis either loss of Medicaid or loss of benefits post-COVID? Where are we tracking in 2025?
So I'm gonna also look to Sam, but I feel like
thank
we
you, Sam.
don't- We don't. They don't track this
Does he
well.
wanna
This is
come up
not
here?
something that we have great data on, and anytime we ask, we
Yeah.
are unable to get really great data that tells us like, this is how many people have fallen off, or this is many. Our data it's big, so it's hard to understand some of that stuff. But I'll let Sam speak a little bit more
You
to
can come
some
up.
of that.
This is an open mic. Open mic.
It's
for
an
you
open
to perform.
mic. Pull up some data.
Apologies for the direct questions.
No, that's great.
I mean, the basis for my question was that I had in total 948 applications received for economic assistance programs in 2024. And to me, that's a really powerful number relative to overall population across all the programs. And so, that's why I go back to that and think.
Yeah.
Well, and we used to bandy about a stat that like 25% of the population of Pitkin County were accessing.
You mean that lived in the cliff, or that were Medicaid?
He can.
I don't think Medicaid. I think accessing our public services. But
Oh, okay. You get your own mic over here, Sam.
So we're looking at what applications in 2024 so far is what we'd like?
2025.
2025, just
Or,
to.
sorry, 2025.
Yeah, really, again, the basis of the question was, life after COVID, life after the public health emergency unwind. And what are we starting to see and feel in terms of, pre-changes in budget, are we already seeing a shift in the number of applications and the folks that are covered in the county?
So as far as folks that are covered, so 2024, our average Medicaid caseload was about 1,100, down from 1,300 at the beginning of the year. And in 2025, we're currently averaging 1,084, down from 1,100. So it is trending downward. But if you look pre-COVID, we're actually lower than what we were pre-COVID, which is interesting. So pre-COVID, the average, so in 2019, the average caseload was 1,397, and we kind of peaked out around 2,200 at the peak there.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. As far as applications go, let's see, first 3 months of the year, Medicaid, we're looking at 60, 80 in 2019, around 90 in 2024, and so far this year, we are, still just below 90. So application-wise, the workload is pretty consistent from last year to this year, but we are continuing to see a slow tick downward in enrollment. Interestingly, CHP Plus has actually ticked back up. So for kids whose families are over income but still can get coverage for the kids, that number's ticked up. I think our caseload now is close to 150. And, historically we'd been kind of around 100. So that has gone up significantly.
Thank you.
Remember the presentation we did on the cliff effect, Sam? I wonder if that's, do you remember that?
I mean, I remember talking about the cliff effect a lot. I don't remember this particular presentation, but yeah, that is what we're talking. All those people who are no longer, our population hasn't gone down.
Right.
Wages haven't increased enough to push people out of this living wage gap, and we're seeing less people now who have Medicaid coverage. We need Mountain Family to confirm, but I'm sure their uninsured rates haven't decreased significantly recently.
No,
That was going to be my next question, has been if you've heard what your conversations with Mountain Family have been and how they're weathering things right now or preparing for, I guess we're all just waiting for this next congressional budget to finalize before we know more.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit, but I see John looking at me out of the corner of my eye.
Go ahead.
But so in the last few quarterly meetings that we've had with them, we are seeing an uptick in uninsured in the program. In fact, we are budgeting more to help subsidize their programming. I think each year we're budgeting more and more. So we are seeing an uptick for those that are uninsured or those that are living in that sort of cliff, right, of either underinsured, uninsured, or unable to afford the market.
What Lindsay said.
Okay. Great. And are we seeing any secondary impacts due to that? Are we hearing from the hospital that, they're absorbing more costs or their rates are going up, or any of those things relative to this increases in uninsurance rates?
I'm not sure that there's a direct correlation that we could draw, but I would say that some of the food security issues that we've been seeing, the higher usage of childcare, because they're different eligibility thresholds now. Like I said, I don't think it's a direct correlation, but I have a question mark around that. I am wondering about some of those things.
Yeah, and I think right now, one of our main strategies to prevent that level of charity care, particularly unnecessary emergency room visits and such in the hospital, has been our partnership around Mountain Family Health, and all the partners have continued to step into that space. So I do think it's a logical conclusion that as uninsured rates go up, the amount of charity care would go up in hospitals, and then that increases costs across the whole system. Right. Part of the logic of our Mountain Family Health Partnership was breaking that cycle by providing the primary care, dental care, and behavioral health services up front to reduce that. All the partners are still in, so I'd like to think we're keeping some bad things from happening still, but as uninsured rates go up, it'll be harder for the partners to continue funding that, and you'll probably see some more major issues that are beyond the scope of primary care and such that are provided as charity care through the hospitals, which will impact all of us.
Well, I'll be interested in tracking that. It's hard to conceive of just removing money out of pots and not having the pressure of that money show up somewhere else. And I think it will help with the full narrative picture for how it affects people with these decisions that we're wrestling with. Okay, are there other questions for our Human Services team as we sit as the Board of Social Services?
We're going to do one more update with
Okay,
Veteran
please do.
Services. Yep.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to move on. So introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. I'm Adam Lazaro, Veteran Service Officer. I'm, of course, a veteran myself, and it's been a real pleasure serving my community, my fellow brothers and sisters, and helping them achieve a level of comfort as far as their living lifestyle, and hope that this integrates into a buffer that when they hit hard times, they would be able to just overcome their hardships. Mission, Pickens County's mission is dedicated to supporting veterans and their families by facilitating access to a range of benefits. This includes disability compensation, pension, death and burial benefits, burial spouse benefits, or survivor spouse benefits, retrieval of service records, which includes discharge documents called the DD-214. I also provide education as far as showing veterans the claim process, showing them the framework of the 38 CFR, which is the Code of Federal Regulation, to help them better understand the criterias and rules that empowers them to, to advocate for themselves. For instance, it allows veterans to understand that they need certain documents to achieve these benefits. For instance, disability compensation. A lot of disability comes from their service training records, right? And these service training records show a record of injuries or a trend of injuries that have occurred during service, and also time and place. For instance, if someone went to Vietnam during the 60s and 70s, they qualify for something called PACT Act, which includes toxic exposure, and this also includes burn pit exposure for people that were in Iraq and Afghanistan, and now other places in Africa, that had included burn pits and things like that. What I've also helped on, besides like get all these records, is also enrollment with the VA healthcare. Help veterans enroll in, get mental health and also VA services, and get connected to a doctor. And with this, let's see. And with this, I've also helped them to save money, because some of them qualify for free health care, and I'll get a little bit more into that. I have also helped veterans connect to local resources, and also with Pickens County departments, and to get local help, things that they may not yet. Excuse me. I've helped them get resources. Not all veterans are ready to receive VA sources, so automatically I have referred some veterans to economic assistance to get enrolled in Medicaid, to get free health care, and also get assistance in getting a phone, things of that nature, and get things started as far as proceeding to get VA health care while everything's in process. Let's see. And on top of that, with that, I've been trying to create a bond between the county and veterans. Just extending a hand out and just providing these services in general. VA benefits. At the beginning of 2023, productivity was slow. Before I came on board, the Pickens County went without a veteran service officer for about almost 2 or 3 years, and between then there was a lot of mistrust that was created. There wasn't really any claims that were ever filed by the previous VSO, and a lot of veterans that were in his caseload were just weren't serviced other than just being enrolled. During that year, I enrolled about 14 veterans. I did 2 claims. A lot of these veterans, they weren't ready to do any claims at the time, mainly because they just did not have the evidence or supporting evidence to do a claim. For instance, I would look at their service training records, and they would have, of course, an injury, but they did not have an updated diagnosis from a doctor. So I did an intent to file, which means it's basically a timestamp that means that within a year a claim is going to be processed. So from there, they get retroactive pay, and from that date, and depending on what percentage they get, it'll backtrack month to month all the way to that day. But after that, the year after, I started making more claims after all these veterans started getting all their information together, and I've submitted I submitted 20 claims last year, and 14 other enrollments, and from there on I was able to just get things going, and from word of mouth, people were pretty grateful about the results I have given them. And now 2025, I had 15. I actually have 15 in total claims that I have filed, and right now I have about 13 open, like just pending on results. So why is compensation very significant? First off, it's non-taxable money for the veteran, and from 10%, it's $175. $175.51, all the way to 100%. That is $3,831 a month. And with that, there's also benefits that come in between with the benefits. For instance, I've been able to connect people over 50%, which 50% allows veterans to get free health care. Co-payments are all waived after that, and everything's free of cost. And furthermore, 70%, $1,759. That allows veterans to also get help from the state as far as going to a state veterans nursing home free of cost. So I've come across some veterans that have no money and were struggling to get anything as far as adult care and things like that. And now that they're 70%, not only did they get compensation in the future, they could easily be referred to over there, and they don't have to worry about much after that. And that's been pretty rewarding, in my opinion. And on top of that, there's been some homeless too that I've been able to get a retro pay about like $22,000. Yeah, retro pay. So, it's from his words, he's been able to stay off the streets and stay out of trouble and not commit any crime. So I could see how this compensation could go a long way, as far as people are doing their living day to day. I would like to speak about the increase of the VA support. So, during my stay here, in the beginning, there was no presence of the VA coming here whatsoever. And now since I've been here, the VA has really been very happy to show up and present their resources to us. And not only that, I was able to connect Pitkin County with some of the VA social workers to just so they could just combine forces and take care of our veterans, and and provide federal support in those regards. And another thing that I'm glad that's happening is that their suicide awareness and prevention program has stepped up, and every other month they show up here, just to show support to the veterans that are in need, and we could get them connected to other resources such as the Vet Center, which is an offspring of the VA, which connects veterans with mental health care, and also helps them connect or achieve a document called a nexus statement, which is basically a medical opinion that service connects one condition to service. And that is what is needed to do a claim for mental health most of the time, especially when such conditions were not in their service training records. Some of the challenges that I came across is it's mainly the culture of Aspen. We have a transient culture. People come and go, and sometimes it's hard to build a relationship or perhaps reach out and find a certain demographic. And the population is quite small. And then this is reported from 2023. I'll explain why. We have about the VA reports about 657 veterans that are enrolled, and this all comes from the geographic distribution of VA expenditure. So altogether, we generate, according to the VA, about $2,620,000. Yeah, and that includes compensation, VA healthcare, and construction, and vocational readiness, and vocational readiness, and employment, which is a work benefit for those that are disabled. Let's see.
So we're running a little behind on our agenda, and I want to make sure we will have time for our next discussions. But I did want to give the board, since we're just meeting you for the first time, an opportunity if you have any questions. Patty?
I want to thank you. This is great information. We've kind of wondering how things were going for you.
Turn on your mic, Patty, I think they said.
Since we brought you on board. I think it's great. So I am going to offer services from the county and the board. So when you do events here in Veterans Park, we'd be more than happy to help you however we can to set them up. I know that Colonel Merritt used to do most of it for us. And now that he's unable to do that, we need to rally support for our veterans to honor them on especially Veterans Memorial Day. And we also love it when they're in the 4th of July parade, so if we can help get more out there, they receive an incredibly deserved welcome from our community when they walk down the parade route during the 4th of July celebration. So did you do it last year with them?
I did it the year before. Something came up on something
bring
personal
you back
came
this
back.
year. Yeah, and get you out there. So
It is most. A lot of this is community driven, and it's a great opportunity to connect with those that that are reclusive and just decide to come out.
Well, we'll see what we can do to help with that. So again, our thanks for all you do. And looking at these numbers, you've been doing a great job, and we appreciate seeing this information. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just want to know how I didn't hear how many veterans are actually served. How many do you have in the pool?
So this is a rough estimation, only because we have a transient culture that comes in and out, and a lot of veterans, they don't report that they live here or are moving out to either us or the VA. So right now we have about 657 that are accounted for.
And then how many do you actually interact with?
How many? My caseload is at 60 right now.
Okay. Great.
Yeah. And right now I'm not exclusive to Pickens County as well. So
My next question.
So all VSOs that are employed within the state of Colorado, and county VSOs and state VSOs, we're able to collaborate and file on their behalfs under Post 039. So
you're multi-county at this point.
Yes, and right now I'm actually pretty much the only VSO in the tri-area county. Garfield County just lost their veteran service officer. It's a political move, but I could get into it later if you like. And Pat Heyman's actually retiring, and right now I'm the only VSO that could do claims. And actually, Eagle County just hired a VSO, but it's going to take a while for them to get accredited to do any work. So, and another update, Garfield County is also moving forward in hiring somebody. And again, it's going to take a while, and I'll be more than glad to assist them, to show them how to do claims and, successfully do some outreach, perhaps.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeffrey?
Yeah, it was really a follow-on. Is there an IGA needed then with Garfield and Eagle, given their lack of personnel?
I can answer that if you want. So, with the CCAP contract that we had with Eagle, we are working with Garfield and Eagle County right now to create an IGA that includes veteran services as well as all of our public benefits programs, because in any public benefit program, as Adam was just alluding to, it takes between 1 to 2 years to get someone fully trained. So it starts program by program. You know, you start with one program and then you expand to the next and the next. So because it takes so much time and we're all so small, we can kind of lean on one another a little bit, like what we're doing right now with CCAP in Eagle County. So Adam and I have talked a little bit about this IGA in hopes that when this kind of thing happens, that we can look at overtime pay and things like that, because he's obviously working over the normal, you know, his normal hours at Pickens County. So, yeah.
So we would just fold it into kind of what we do for those other programs.
Yeah, it's a benefit, it's a public benefit program, so.
And furthermore, I think it's very important, granted, that Eagle has 1,380 veterans and Garfield County has 2,746 veterans. You know, that's of 2023, and this report is generated like the end of every fiscal year, and it shows up like every September. So 2023 showed up last September. So, you know, all this, I'm curious to find out myself how many veterans are actually here and how many we can enroll and actually see like how the VA will respond all to this, and you know, and basically perhaps we could get more health care around here if that's the case.
Go ahead, Greg.
Just wanted to ask, what kind of volume do you see with the medical services, the VA medical services in Glenwood?
A lot of them get sent to Glenwood, but there's also a program called Community Care, which allows the VA to basically connect someone that's connect them to a hospital that's closer to them. So, for instance, not Valley View, but sometimes Valley View and also Aspen Valley. They're usually connected to those resources.
Grand River.
And do you have any number, like what's the typical number of patients that cycle through there in a year?
Unfortunately, I don't have access to that information.
No, even with how many, you don't even know that?
No.
Okay. Just wondering how busy they are.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly transportation's a big issue for them. So getting to Grand Junction to the main VA facility is not always feasible.
Yes.
So they go without.
Okay.
Great, thank you, Dan.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much. Always a great Board of Social Services meeting. May I please have a motion to adjourn? We have to adjourn as the Board of Social
We have
Services.
to adjourn, but you don't have, you called
Motion
it.
to
I
adjourn
called
the
a
boss.
I thought we
special.
were gonna do I thought we're not gonna do social services legislation?
We did,
We did that.
it's broad, yeah, it's broad.
So moved.
We're running a
Can I
half
catch it
hour
later?
behind agenda. We did some updates on the social services.
Okay, we can just catch up later if we need to.
Okay.
I'm
All right,
you
I'm
get a
sorry.
motion
Who
to
made a
adjourn?
I
motion?
did.
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 Aye, thank
Thank
you.
you.
Okay, we are going to keep our crew here, but now we're in work session mode where we don't vote on things officially or approve formal actions.
Guys,
Thank you, Anna.
you can't go. I wasn't dismissing you by any means.
And thank you all. Thanks.
That's why I brought you up
Thanks
and
for
gave
coming.
you a mic.
So we're going to launch into, the board have requested some edification relative to the current landscape of food insecurity in our community, and a recognition that I think we all could use some additional information about who's doing what and what gaps maybe still exist. And so thank you for joining us today to help us have a clearer picture of what's happening out there. So thank you.
Sounds good. I'm Sam Lander-Casper. I'm Deputy Director, Human Services. And yeah, we're kind of, I think, to give the landscape of where we are now, it'll help to start kind of back at the beginning, at least as far as I know it, starting pretty much in 2017 when I started here. And I hope one of the takeaways from this when we get to the end is that we see that it's taken a long time, but I think right now we're at an exciting point where we're starting to see all of this work that's been put in for all this time is starting to have us in a space where we can really start to move forward regionally. And so if we look back at the beginning, before I even got here, one of the first things that I'm aware of around Pitkin County looking at food insecurity was a food hub study by Open Space and Trails, where they were kind of looking, it was more from an agricultural perspective, but they had reached out to the ag producers, and one of the things they walked away with was this idea that there needed to be some sort of hub where folks could bring their products and store them and distribute them, just some space really, because building on farms, especially if you're leasing land, is expensive, might not be allowed. And so producers had just identified this need for some sort of centralized food hub. Building off of that, in 2017, Pitkin kicked off the year with a food security summit, really just looking at what is the kind of landscape of food security in Pitkin County. And we walked away with a number of things that we identified as issues, being stigma, distribution was a big one. And that's what started that conversation around a food hub. But then Eagle and Garfield, this was without any coordination. Each of these communities recognized they needed to look at the issue of food insecurity. So Eagle and Garfield did their own food security summits. And it was at Garfield's where Eagle, Pitkin, and Garfield all sat down and went, we all kind of have these same problems. Maybe we should talk about this together since, we're all in a region together. We cross each other's county lines all the time. Our populations are very transient. Our workforce is commuting through here. And so that actually led to the formation of the Safe and Abundant Nutrition Alliance, which, Greg, I'm pretty sure you're the one who named that.
I didn't name it, but I think I participated early on.
I think you came up with the name in the survey, maybe not. I might be misremembering. But yeah, so we came up with this group called the Safe and Abundant Nutrition Alliance, which was a regional coalition to look at food security efforts between Parachute and Aspen. I think early on we had, it was an interesting group because we had Lift Up, we had Food Bank of the Rockies, we had Aspen Family Connections. It was an interesting group, and so we would meet regularly to really look at the efforts that were currently happening, and talk about ways that we could streamline that. We were at one point looking at how do we move forward with securing grants. That was kind of the primary focus at that time, which actually happened. However, the grants that were secured were largely through Public Health and Colorado Health Foundation and focused on outreach, which led SANA in the direction they currently are, which is this Promotora model, which gets folks out into the community to connect people with a wide variety of benefits. It's not strictly focused on food anymore. That took place over some time. Oh, good, you changed the thing. So while that was happening in 2019, pre-COVID, actually, we were able to secure funding through the LFPA, which is Local Foods Purchasing Agreement. There were a few more letters after that, which provided funding to purchase local food that could be distributed to older adults and WIC families. And so we established the Older Adults and WIC CSA program with Two Roots Farm. This was all through, at that time it was not Nourish, it was Live Well, Colorado. They became Nourish, Colorado. And that program, I think you're all aware, we just talked earlier about funding it this year, but really is a direct service. It provides economic support to a local agricultural producer. There are no administrative costs associated with it. The food goes right to older adults, and at that time, WIC families. So it was a great pass through. People were getting fresh local food. 2020, COVID kicked in. Everything was pretty crazy, but around food assistance, we pulled together this group that had kind of previously been the SANA group. And that included, like I said, Aspen Family Connections. I always get Aspen Family Connections and Aspen Community Foundation mixed up. Aspen Family Connections, Lift Up, Food Bank of the Rockies, and a lot of the work went towards establishing some of the distributions that we still see today up until recently, and expanding access to food during that time. We also received a number of grants to purchase more local food. We were buying meat from local producers and getting that out at the local pantries. And at that time, we also included food security for the first time as a goal in our strategic planning for human services. So really started looking at, how do we understand food security here? In 2021, and this, I would also add that during this time, we had been having discussions both as SANA and this new iteration that hadn't quite yet become the Mountain Coalition for Food and Nutrition Security around a food hub. And we were going and looking, Lift Up and Food Bank and ourselves, looking for a space that could potentially serve as a food hub. And we were just having no luck looking at places we might be able to purchase, places might be able to rent. Not good fits. A lot of these places in the industrial area weren't necessarily safe for food storage. So this is ongoing during the entire time. It's been a focus for quite a while. And at this point, the idea came up that potentially the Emma store buildings could be a potential food hub. We spoke with Open Space. They thought it was a good idea. We came and spoke to the board and got the direction to, you need to see if this is feasible. Because of that conversation, we are actually contacted by New Venture Advisors, what they do is food feasibility studies, and Pitkin, Eagle, Lift Up,
Community Foundation,
Aspen Community Foundation, and Farm Collaborative pitched in together to fund this feasibility study, which was a very intensive process. I think they did a great job, and I think you all see the executive report attached to this, and really provided us with a number of options. There was Lift Up at that time was also looking at a space further down Valley. We had looked at the city market building in Carbondale. That wasn't something that could come up. But then Lift Up did also find the space that they're currently at in Glenwood and started moving in that direction based on the feasibility study that said a two-part solution would really be useful in conjunction with potentially the Emma building. In 2021, I reached out to CSU because one thing we noticed is that the data we had is all front range based, right? The solutions we are hearing about are metro center specific. And we said, we need to really understand a true scientific look at food insecurity here. And so we reached out to CSU. They were pretty excited about it. Came up, met with us, met with the group, and they decided to begin a survey in our community that, and I love to say it, statistically relevant survey. So I'm not a statistician. They knew how many people they needed to talk to safely say that the research that they were doing was relevant and realistic. And that's what we really wanted to come away with, was something we could refer back to and have some surety in that we were basing it on good information. And so that did take a while. To survey 1,076 people is not that easy, especially when it's a 20-minute survey. So they worked on that for quite a while. During that time in 2022, the food feasibility study happened, and I think we came and they presented to all of y'all. The McFINS, the Mountain Coalition for Food and Nutrition Security, was formed, which was a reiteration of SANA. And this time around, there was a little bit more organization around this. West Mountain Regional Health Alliance, who had been managing grants for SANA, stepped in to kind of work as a backbone organization to help provide some support to this group. One thing we found with the group is when you pull together a bunch of executive directors and folks that have a lot going on, it's hard for them to find time to add more stuff to their plate. And looking at food security is not a small task. So that group began to meet. Really the initial step in that was to do what I would call some aspirational strategic planning. Like, what is the purpose of McFinn's, right? Obviously, we are trying to improve food nutrition security, but what does that look like? Some of the goals identified around the group were providing more access to local foods. Obviously, it's providing enough food for folks, but taking that step beyond it. So culturally responsive foods and things like that. And in 2022 is when Lift Up was able to move in Pickens County in our Suite 206 at the HHS building and began providing services there. 2023, I was asked to join the Aspen Institute Food Leaders Fellowship, which was a really great program for 18 months. I was in the second cohort. They're currently in the third cohort. I'm still working with them a lot, and I think it's going to provide us with some really great resources moving forward. We've got George Washington University interested in doing some food security studies here with CSU, potential internships and things like that. So still looking to see how that plays out, but it's been a great connection and nice to connect with the Institute with them being here. 2024, McFinn's, the Food Coalition began what we're calling strategic planning, which I know is confusing because we did that aspirational strategic planning. This was a more technical strategic approach. And what we were doing with that is looking at our gaps. So basically what this group did, pulled together, listed all of our resources, what's out there, what's happening, where, when, and then we took that and we brought that to GIS, and Lauren with GIS has been awesome helping us get this mapped out, which gave us these actual visual gaps that we can start to see. And where we're at right now in that process is we are taking what we saw in the gaps and exploring what we need to fill in. So it really is going to break down to really tactical strategies and even a budget so that we can start to create a funding plan for addressing food insecurity based on the food security data from the study, and looking at it from a programmatic level rather than an organizational level, because we know that if you want to be successful, especially in a funding landscape that's getting more and more difficult to be successful, you need to be able to tell the story correctly. So we want to be able to tell the whole story when we go speak to folks. 2024, Lift Up purchased their building in Glenwood Springs as a permanent food hub and began distributing food out of there to a lot of partners, and also had a thrift store and was beginning work there. And then we were able to actually secure some funding from the Colorado Historical Society to do a traffic study for the Emma site, which is kind of the precursor to move this forward. We need to be able to be sure that we can even have cars going there, because it had been, I think, 5 years since they'd done the last study. And in order to move forward with the site and make sure it's accessible, we need to have that done. And so getting to 2025, and this is where I hope it starts to paint the picture of things are happening and moving forward. We RFP'd the space at HHS. Harvest for Hunger was awarded an annual lease. They're operating what they're calling their stigma-free food pantry, which is open 8 to 5, Monday through Friday. No oversights, which gives you that kind of stigma-free access. Granted, obviously, we have security at the building, so if there's any issues, we have people to respond. As I spoke to the GIS work that we're doing with the gap analysis and the strategic planning, still working on that. Two Roots was, you were all, it was great that you were able to fund them for this year until we can figure out what to do about the end of this LFPA funding. That is going to be part of the strategic planning process. How do we secure, maintain funding for that? We went down to CSU and presented to their faculty, some visiting faculty, and their food nutrition program about the findings, and CSU is actually wants to continue the study to look at it from a more personal level. They're doing what's called a photo voice project, which allows people to go record what food security looks like to them, the people who are experiencing it. They're also pursuing an additional up to $1 million in funding through the USDA that can be used to help support food security efforts up here. So they've been a great partner, and it's great to have an educational organization working with us because they have access to so many different sources of information and funding. And then, food security continues to be a strategic focus. We are in the middle of strategic planning right now for human services. We know that food security is going to be involved there, especially with everything that we see going on with SNAP and other programs like that. So I think the next step for McFinn's that I just want to, and actually I might just open it up for questions if anybody has questions about that strategic planning process that I mentioned, because I thought I saw some quizzical looks, and I don't explain it well because I'm too deep into it. So maybe before we move on to the federal landscape, we can see if folks have any questions.
Sure. Okay, board members. I'm curious, I would love to actually see in more detail that gap analysis at whatever point in time you guys are ready to present it, but I think that would really help me understand sort of who's doing what, who's receiving what, and what is missing on both sides.
Yeah, we hope to have, and Lauren has got the map up online now. We initially started with, I guess it'd be like a hard copy version, and Lauren's getting that online, and we want that to be a resource, not just for the McFinn's group for planning, but also for the public once we have it fully ready. What we're doing is we're building out locations with kind of service zones around it, so saying a food pantry can essentially serve a 10-mile radius, so that if you click on food pantries, you'll see where they are and what radiuses are currently, in service, and that's where we're pulling our gaps from. So, yeah, I think we've got some work to do yet, but once we work through that, we'd love to come back and show you the whole picture.
Okay, Patty?
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see what the individual needs are. I think we're going to have a range. I think we're going to have some trends that go through that, but some people think one thing about what their food security means, and others definitely have different needs. So I think that'll be really interesting information to come forward. Yeah, thanks.
Well, and I'll just comment, I did think, I forget one of the stats, but there was some overwhelmingly large number of dissatisfaction with sort of the quality of food that I guess struck me as, is that sort of a community statement being made rather than a statement being made by folks who are engaging in these?
Or both.
Yeah, or both, yeah.
Yeah, and what I thought was interesting about that in the CSU data is that's not necessarily just talking about, it's primarily not even talking about pantries. It's just in general,
right.
The access to quality food is difficult because a lot of what's produced here locally is out of price range for folks, and that's not critical of farmers. It costs a lot to do business here. So yeah, I think one of the things we do see is that adds to food security, right? Because food security isn't just about hunger. It's about the right kind of quality food that a family or an individual needs. So yeah, that was a great point that came out to focus on. How do we improve the quality of food?
Mm-hmm. Great.
I remember comments that the food bank, the Rockies, was a lot of what they sent up wasn't particularly high quality food. It was just what they could get their hands on, I guess. Maybe more processed and more lower quality food as part of the. Does that ring true at all? I don't want to put you on the spot, but I'm just wondering what's the typical thing you get from a group like Food Bank? What are they shipping up here? Is it leftover mac and cheese that didn't sell, or is it an array of useful nutrition?
It's an array, and I know that I recall the point that you're talking about. It was kind of in that mid-post-COVID part where there was this time where we were getting, it was bad produce, I think was what people were referring to. And since then, I haven't heard any of those concerns, and Food Bank has really, since I started here, has done a great job of improving the quality of food. I mean, when I started here, produce was not even on the radar. You know, it was sheet cakes and soda and old bread. And now they are purchasing a lot. They are probably going to be struggling, like I think all the organizations Lift Up included, with the federal programs decreasing accessibility, right? Because those really helped augment if you were getting some, you know, TFAP or whatever, that could save you some money to buy what you were, you know, like farm to food pantry, like Lift Up's doing. So, you know, we're going to obviously see those organizations impacted, and that will probably affect the quality. But I'd also go to, I mean, I go to City Market and the quality is not good either, right? I mean, I'm getting a bell pepper and it's rotten a day later, you know, and it's $3. So that's something that impacts everybody, not just at the pantries. But if you do see folks trying to push higher quality food into the stores, you're going to see less available for, food organizations like Food Bank and Lift Up, I think.
Can I ask another question?
Yes.
Just regarding, one of the concerns I have is that with the federal fund going away, there's certainly, we're already leaning on philanthropy locally for organizations to keep them going. But if the money slows down, how can we keep the volunteer army still going? And are we utilizing the volunteers who are engaged already? I'm thinking Lift Up in particular because I know them better, but are we able to help take advantage of that resource? Because the money may not be there, but people and farmers willing to pitch in one way or another might be.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. I'm hoping that this strategic planning helps with that. I think when we have a coordinated message and people will be able to see why we're doing what we're doing, what the efforts are, I'm hoping that'll engage more people who will want to participate in maybe different ways. You know, a lot of people end up in volunteerism through, maybe at one point they were a customer there or they've got a friend. I think if we can come up with a strategic vision for this regionally and get it out there so that people are aware of it, that understanding can help draw more folks in, right? Just understanding the kind of the scope and the map of who's doing what. I think, uproot, for example, in gleaning season, who doesn't want to go out and pick some apples? I mean, that's great. So making sure that people are aware of opportunities like that.
Great, thanks. And the last question is just regarding infrastructure, and I Lift Up has their campaign for the building. I wasn't sure if Emma Store was even still on the radar. It's a huge capital contribution, and is that the best way to spend resources? Is the question I'll be bringing up. Is buying a building or outfitting a building the best way to serve the food security needs, the communities? A huge question mark. I hope you guys get into that.
Yeah, I mean, we are continuing. We received direction early on that this was something we would need to find funding for, and that's how we're approaching it. So we wouldn't want this, if we are able to move forward with Emma, we wouldn't want it to take away from anything or anyone's budget. We'd look to bring in that funding ourselves and have it as an added asset. And we do still think that it is important to have that space, both for the agricultural producers in that area and tying those folks into the food system, as well as providing for organizations like Lift Up and Harvest for Hunger to have space to where they're not having to truck up and down this road. I mean, even just the environmental impact would be helpful. So, but that's how we're approaching it with open spaces. One step at a time, and if we get the go-ahead, we're going to start looking for funding, and we'll just have to figure that out as we get there.
Great, thanks.
I'm wondering, looking at some of this mapping, some of the duplication, I guess, makes sense in some ways, like school lunch programs at different schools, obviously, senior congregate meals from different senior services providers. But some of this other stuff, I'm wondering if the duplication makes sense, or if the organizations are collaborating to minimize duplication. I guess looking at some of this fixed pantry options.
I think what you're seeing there is that my spreadsheet won't fit on one page. So, and I mean, the rows on this are huge. So we actually map this out, days that they're open, times they're open. And so when you see some duplication at similar locations, that's probably reflective of different hours on different days because we couldn't map it correctly. This is mostly to feed GIS.
Sure.
And I just, when I tried to print this, it was too ginormous to fit on a page that would have been legible.
Okay. So are these organizations competing with each other at all? Or are they providing, unique and independent and resources that are uniquely beneficial for the people who need it?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, so the way we came up with these categories or the service type was we pulled everyone together. Who we could, which is most of the folks providing these services. And we mapped this out. We said, well, what are the different food services that we're providing? Because we didn't want to leave anything out. We knew we needed to understand the full scope. And then once we had the list, we said, okay, who's doing what? And that's what you start to see reflected on this sheet here. And I think everyone is in agreement in McFinn's that as we move forward, we are there to represent the approach to ending food insecurity. And what's happening as we build this funding plan is folks are finally starting to see themselves in what are going to be the asks, right? So I think that can help people feel more comfortable and that no one is trying to be squeezed out. And if we do identify duplicative services, the goal isn't to stop someone from participating. It's just to make sure that we're being the most efficient in that particular area we can be. So are there options? Are there opportunities for partnerships? Those are the things we're going to be looking at when we get down to that program level at a, location specific program level information.
Okay, thank you. Other questions
I'm
on
good.
this? This was
Thank you,
our
Sam.
request. Greg?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
I'm just gonna cover a couple more things, and I feel like Sam is not giving himself enough credit.
Sam
in
never
some of
does.
this. I know.
Learned.
So I'm going to say it. A lot of these efforts have been driven by Sam's creative mind and the way that he's, he initially was who brought Sana together and started, us, Pickens County, I would say. And has been really kind of holding a lot of the weight through strategic planning on the programs committee, this mapping stuff. This is Pickens County, right? This is SAM and GIS. And so we're giving a lot of resource towards this just in terms of staff time and then kind of how we're, the creative mind of Sam, of course, as well. So I just wanted to mention that because I feel like it's important, and I know Sam would never say it for himself.
Thank you, Sam.
Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty huge when you look at it this way. Also good for us to just kind of, we've already talked a little bit about like what's happening and with SNAP, right, and USDA grants and like some of those things. We're looking at like clawbacks and cuts to some of those things. So now is an even more important time, I would say, than ever for us to get really dialed in to what this food security strategic plan will be and kind of where our partners are showing up and us, right, in the different ways. Just to give you kind of the like landscape, Garfield County Human Services they're giving towards these efforts, their Human Services Commission. The Eagle County Food System, the Community Foundation up there is supporting, I think, almost entirely their pantry program, which is it's much like what Harvest for Hunger is doing. It's a gleaning and food rescue programs. And then, of course, the Healthy Community Fund, just to give you an idea locally, has also been giving towards these efforts in many different ways, whether it's just towards one organization or towards many for these. And it's kind of reminiscent of like, when you were asking about the volunteer question, I was thinking about COVID. And do you remember how many volunteers mobilized around those drive-through pantries and things like that? It's about kind of how we're engaging the community around some of these efforts. We've even seen with Harvest for Hunger, like it's a totally different volunteer pool that he's pulling in. So it's been interesting. They were just in the building today, like doing some work and fixing the place up, I guess, for themselves, bringing in refrigerators and things like that. And their volunteer base looks totally different than Lift Up's volunteer base. So we're just already starting to see opportunities, I think, and how we're engaging the community around some of those things. So call out to that. I feel like that's important. And again, just with these upcoming changes with SNAP, if we see people fall off the cliff of SNAP, they're going to need food. So it's more important now than ever for us to be supporting these efforts. And then I think you already went through this, but the follow-up to this is that once that strategic plan is completed, we will be coming back to you all just to show what the outcomes of that are, and there may be some funding requests attached. Although to Sam's point, we're looking, the Colorado Historical Society is funding the traffic study, so we're going to be looking and trying to find those grants. But I have a feeling they're going to be fewer and farther between.
Yeah, I would just say that the coming back is going to really, like it says here, paint the full picture. And, the number is going to be huge because we're looking at food insecurity regional solutions. And that doesn't mean we're going to come here and say Pickens County needs to do anything particular. It's really just to inform y'all based on what we know as subject matter experts, all of the groups involved. What we see is how we need to approach this and what we estimate the cost would be to do it. From there, it's a matter of trying to chase down funding from a lot of different sources. But at least then we have a plan and an approach.
It's nice to partner with Open Space and Trails because it seems to me they have access to grants in ways that Human Services does not right now. So I think it's nice to have that partnership and have them bring in a completely different lens for us to look through to try to find some of those grants as well.
And we've been using our grant facilitator that the county has contracted out with.
We will if we find some of
And
those.
Northwest COG has that opportunity also.
Mm-hmm.
Ask a
Yes,
question
go
for
ahead.
Jeffrey's benefit, because I don't think he was ever here when we had the conversation, but when we were discussing Emma Store last time, someone, maybe somebody from Open Space, weighed in and said, would it cost less to build a facility or move the Emma Store building across the highway onto the Two Roots property? Just so it's accessible and we don't have to go through all these incredible manipulations to try to get people there and open it up and make it work. Like a new build might be cheaper than a remodel. And I just wondered thought I'd throw that out there because it might still have merit.
Well, we do own the land behind the church over there. I think that's what the Open
Right.
Space Board, because it was a joint meeting with the Open Space Board and you all to talk about that.
Conservation easement on it.
Are you thinking
Yeah.
brick by brick?
That
Like
was
lift it.
proposed. Somebody said it might cost less to
Yeah.
do that than to try to fix something that's, you have to go backwards in order to fix that one.
Yeah, we are going to be getting an estimate from a construction company to take the plans from NVA because it's been 3 years at this
Been a
point,
while, yeah.
and get it updated for current costs estimates, just so we know what we'd be looking at. And then that'd obviously, be part of the question is, it sounds crazy to try to move something across 82, but we'd look into it, I guess.
We put in what we want, where we need it.
Yeah, or
rather
build a new structure, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Other questions?
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
Are those
you.
pepper strips
Okay, thank you.
those are-
This is great.
and broccoli? So do
I
we
mean,
get
from
to
that,
eat
I
the
don't know
thank
where
you
he
on the
got
way out? Thanks, guys.
Are we taking a short break?
Yes, we can take a short break. Would 7 minutes work? Come back at 3:10?
Yep, I can do it if I go now.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime you want to have a chat.
Yeah, it's freezing in here. Should have worn a sweater.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Pickens County Board of County Commissioners work session on Tuesday, May 27th. We are moving on to hear, I guess, a legislative wrap-up from our management analyst, Levi Borst. Hi, Levi.
Hi, good afternoon. Levi Borst, Management Analyst. I'm here for the second part of a legislative wrap-up. I almost hesitate to call it that because while the state session has ended, we obviously have plenty more to go as the federal sessions and federal drama unfold. So I hope to just review a couple of position bills that we've had on our radar. Not that there's a whole lot of updates to pass along. And then cover a couple of, I guess, items that came up federally and a couple other advocacy issues that we might choose to engage on. So pretty much the standard format. A few general highlights. Our budget package was signed by the governor. And as we've talked about, we're not looking forward to a special session, but we probably will get to enjoy one. It's hard to know. I think currently there aren't any special sessions scheduled, but we're really anticipating that we will see them just based a lot on the budget picture and uncertainties coming from the federal level. Locally, again, we took 9 legislative positions in the state session, engaged in written advocacy and testimony across those. Just to remind everybody that we advocate pretty heavily through a lot of member organizations, so while we didn't exactly take formal positions and lobby, CCAT, CCI, CC4CA is testifying and lobbying on our behalf on probably, I would guess, a couple hundred bills between those different organizations. Federal outreach efforts. So we've already had quite a few of these, and I think we've got a few more in our future, some of which we can talk about here today. So those will be the opportunities that exist as we go forward. In the last update, we talked about which bills had passed, which bills had died, and whether or not the governor was through signing and vetoing. So I wanted to follow through with a couple of those things. The risk model use and property insurance policy, this was one we supported and was sent to the governor on May 2nd, and he's not yet signed it. Memory serves me, I think he's got 30 days to do that. Sue Knight.
Bless you.
And the hazard, of course, here is that if he does veto something, even if we hope to have some kind of a veto override attempt, the legislature's in recess, so I don't know that we have that opportunity now.
Wouldn't they
Go ahead, Patty.
wouldn't they have to be called back? It's not the legislature's fault that it went over, out into their recess. Couldn't they call it back?
When I read about that since our last meeting, it sounds like if the governor vetoes once the session is over, then that's that.
So it negates the legislation's right, quote unquote, to do an override.
I think that's motivation to get your bill sent through more than 30 days before the end of session. That was my understanding as I read that.
That's interesting.
Maybe somebody can correct me if that's wrong.
Yeah. Delay to the point of no return.
Well, there's probably strategy there if you're the governor.
Yep.
Another bill that has not yet been signed is our Regional Transportation Authority Sales and Use Tax exemption. I know that's one we followed pretty closely through our partners with RAFTA. Again, sent to the governor May 7th, and nothing since.
Have you spoken with the governor's office about this by any chance? Sometimes they just schedule the bill signings in public settings. Do we know what the profile is on this?
I don't know. I think a lot of times maybe the governor just doesn't actually go through with signing, and then I think if he refuses to sign after 30 days, then it does become law. So maybe if he doesn't want to put his signature to it but doesn't care enough to veto it, then he'll just abstain from signing and wait for the 30 days, and I don't know, as some sort of a symbolic gesture of some kind. Oh boy. Aside from that, our permits for clean technology was signed, and that was a pretty toothless bill by the time it got amended. Lodging tax expansion was signed. And of course, our Tabor constitutionality lawsuit died before it got any legs. We spoke briefly last time about what we might expect to see again in the coming session. I think these interim cycles just go faster every year, so I like to think what we're going to see coming up. Vulnerable road user. You can see I've listed some past bills. We had 1 in the 24 session and 2 in the 25 session. I think CC4CA has this high on their priority list, and I think we have some support at the governor's office for this as well, so I'm hopeful that we'll see that again in the next session. I think we'll see data centers again, which I guess could go either way. I think this is probably a conversation that will keep happening, and so maybe if we can be engaged early enough, then we can make them less harmful than they need to be. We had 1 in 2024 and 1 this year, and they both, had real problems in terms of tax incentives and water and energy and all sorts of local impact. So it's hard to say when we'll see these, but I imagine we will see another data center bill. As for Tabor reform, I think this is pretty high on everybody's list. It came up really highly ranked in the CCAT survey, sorry. So I imagine we'll have more conversation about that, as well as conversation about a potential referred measure. And there's definitely some strategy to be had there of what makes the most sense. I think a referred measure versus a lawsuit challenging Tabor's constitutionality both have a lot of unintended consequences, but probably some questions that we'll have to square with sooner or later. We definitely saw that the budget package was a lot of reallocation and reorganizing, and it didn't address a lot of the programmatic problems that led to a shortfall to begin with. The first part, of course, being revenue, and then another part being spending. So I think we're going to have some interesting budget conversations. Actually, I'm sure they're already having them. As far as I understand, as soon as the budget is signed, then the JBC starts their preparation for the next session, so they're already working. On bill financing. So this is one that didn't exactly directly affect us, but as you remember, this was a way to fund sort of climate-friendly upgrades to homes and appliances through people's utility bills. So this was a priority for CC4CA. And unfortunately, it didn't get through this year, so I would imagine we'd see it again. The homeowners insurance enterprise, and those were the 2 enterprises for the hail-damaged roofs and wildfire insurance mitigating efforts around people's homes. I guess we'll see this to some degree coming back. Of course, this came from the governor's office and through DOI, so I would hope that we would see something like this again. The Division of Parks and Wildlife Outdoor Rec. This was a super late bill that talked about having Parks and Wildlife spearhead a lot of the recreation planning, river access, things like that. And I think while it's a good program, and a lot of it's already happening here, it was such a late bill with so little engagement that it made a lot of people really nervous, especially around water access issues and things like that. So I think we'll see this again, but we'll probably see it really early in the session next year. And then clean energy planning, just as a general theme. We didn't see any legislation this year about that. I hope we will next year. So speaking of where we might see legislation, CCAT sent out a survey, I guess last week, 2 weeks ago, that was talking about a lot of different things, but the most compelling I thought was revenue diversification efforts and where we might see legislation going forward and the viability, I guess, of that legislation. So it talked about how does your county feel about excise tax, services tax, vacant property tax, real estate transfer, short-term rental reclassification, and unincorporated sales tax. And so you could vote very important, moderately important, not important, and you got a score for that. And then it was broken out further by rural versus urban counties. So you can kind of get a sense for where urban counties saw more value versus where rural counties saw more value. And without a doubt, the leader overall for at least rural counties is real estate transfer. The bottom line on this graphic, though, talks about viability, and this comes a lot from threats or promises from the governor's office about what that office would allow. We know the opinion's been pretty well stated about real estate transfer. Short-term rental is pretty non-viable, and the vacant property tax is also a tough sell.
I think the average for services tax is supposed to be 1.65. Just a little thing as I'm reading
typo. Oh, no. I think you're probably right. I'll just hover the mouse over that part.
Okay,
so
good.
You hiding it?
Yeah. Nobody will know the difference. So I thought this was kind of interesting just in terms of how can counties diversify their revenue going forward, and especially where's the difference between the urban and the rural counties. I think it makes some sense when you think about just the demographic makeup. Sorry, Francie, did I interrupt you?
What is a services tax?
Well, it's not clear to me what the difference between an excise tax and a services tax.
What's an
I think-
excise tax?
I would imagine an excise tax being something on like on a specific industry.
Okay.
So like a ski lift ticket tax maybe.
Like lumber that comes in, construction supplies.
Services would be like taxes on design services, like architectural services.
Oh.
I was gonna say manicures.
Like property management services.
Interesting.
There's been a lot of conversation about this relative to the economy changing from
Manufacturing
goods
to
to
service.
services.
Yeah.
So I think we'd probably see pretty heavy industry pushback on probably either of those, be my guess. But I know that some places have things like taxes on lift tickets, and I think it generates a decent amount of money for them. So this,
And one more question, if you don't mind. Is that okay, Kelly?
Of course.
The STR reclassification, that's to make it a lodging?
right, to reclassify to some degree commercial lodging and to go from that 6.25 to 27 or whatever the difference is between those two
Depending on
tax
the number
rates.
of nights or whatever.
Sure.
Thanks.
So can I take a
Yes.
question? So if they were to do that, change STRs to a lodging, we'd have to have zoning changes because most of the STRs are not in zoning that allows lodging. Interesting. Unintended consequence of something changing here that doesn't reflect what would need to be changed there. Interesting.
That I don't know.
Yeah, just a tack on.
And we've tried that a couple different years, this year and last year both, and there's just never any agreement on where do you put the cutoff for number of nights and
Right, yeah.
and how big of an impact does it make. Here, what's our number of short-term rentals? It's not huge, and so,
Didn't we look at it for our county and it was minimal?
yeah, it's not the hill to die
It's
on
like
for us.
89, 90.
What'd you say?
I think it's around 90 short-term rental.
90 what?
Short-term
Oh,
rental permits that we
yeah.
have
So I
issued in the
meant the
county.
income that we would generate from that was minimal.
Yeah, I don't think the difference between what we currently do and reclassifying them would be huge. There are probably some other places that have a lot higher numbers where it makes a bigger difference. I just don't think that's
Yeah,
us.
like Summit.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, this actually
It
doesn't.
depends. I mean, if you take a, $10 million home, if they're short-term renting, going from a 6% property tax to 27% property tax,
Be
would be a
great for Aspen.
fourfold increase. Anyway, so.
So this hasn't led to any, any ideas of legislation yet. It's just sort of get a feel of what we want to be doing in the interim and how we're going to start to structure some of those conversations about where to focus next year. So speaking of existing legislation, I guess I'm not sure the simplest way to jump into this. We've had a few pieces over the past couple of years that have started to talk about sort of the childcare affordability, availability problem that we all face in almost every mountain community and probably others. Well, I don't know where Ashley wants to jump in here.
I don't.
She doesn't want to speak today. So in 2022, there was a piece of legislation that was called the Child Care Center Property Tax Exemption. And to make a long story short, what this did was allow 501c3s the property tax they might rent to also be forgiven or to be exempted.
I think both owners, regardless of whether you owned your building or you rented in a building, if you were a 501c3 nonprofit, you didn't have to pay property tax, which covered the vast majority of our child care centers in Pickens County because most of them are nonprofits.
Wait. You didn't have to pay any property tax, or it was just reclassified?
No property tax, as any nonprofit. Of course, there was no guarantee that any property tax savings be passed on to the center. So if I rented as a child care center, if I rented Ashley's property, she wouldn't pay the property tax, but there was no guarantee that as the operator, I would realize the benefit of that. So I think that was one kind of quirk to that program. And of course, that didn't address anybody who was operating a for-profit child care center. So last year, local government property tax credit rebates was a bill sponsored by Senator Roberts, I think. And this allowed for property tax credits for properties designated a specific area of local concern. And that was left completely wide open, I think, by design. And so as it could relate to the child care question, if a board or a council were to designate by ordinance an area of specific local concern, and that could be anything, right? It could be scuba diving rental shops, it could be childcare, it could be whatever it was specific to that community, then that county could exempt the county portion only of that property tax. So of course we can't touch schools or fire districts or special districts or things like that, just the county portion.
So knowing that that existed, and we had heard some talk from other communities that they were trying to apply the special the area of local concern to other areas, it was used as an example when the bill was running through the system that child cares could be one of these areas of local concern. So we kind of had it on our mind as staff. We also have some child care providers who are for-profit who had it on their minds. So over the last couple months, we ran the numbers on what it would look like for those child care centers that are located in Pickens County that are for-profit. So they're not currently, they're being taxed at a commercial rate, to be then designated, childcare be designated as an area of local concern, and then those folks apply for this reduction. The long and short of it is that it's about a $1,200 reduction on an $18,000 property tax bill. Francie's already questioning my math, I know, because it's not exact. It was a small-ish amount. And so we ran it on a couple of our child care centers, and the child care centers also ran it for themselves. And they said, well, that really doesn't help me much. So at this time, we're not recommending that the board move forward and establish child cares as an area of local concern so that they can then use this property tax reduction, because the amount that folks are paying on a commercial child care center, which has to be quite large to accommodate children and all the necessary things in it, is going to be a pretty small percentage of their overall bill. And we haven't heard from any of the for-profit child cares that this would be something that would help them. We can always reevaluate it. It wasn't going to be an easy process. We were going to need to have a number of meetings with you all evaluating, is this the only thing that we designate as an area of local concern, which could certainly open up the floodgates for anybody to really come and petition for the board to consider their sector of the community an area of local concern. So if the board wants to evaluate this, we're certainly welcome. We're certainly happy to do that. The bang for the buck just didn't seem like it was there, given kind of the administrative burden. And we heard the same from the child care centers. Of the ones that are for profit, 3 centers are owned by the same for-profit owner, and 2 of those don't pay property tax anyway because they rent from either local governments or from school districts. So those property taxes are not being passed on. So it would really just impact one owner of a for-profit childcare center, and then there's one renter. They're for-profit, and then they rent from a for-profit commercial. So there's no telling if that property tax reduction would actually be passed on to the renter. So again, a pretty small overall benefit. But that was our initial staff kind of assessment. You can probably speak to these numbers better than I can.
Well, I just broke down some of the different funds that the property tax bill is broken into. And of course, what you'll see, of course, missing are schools and fire protection districts because we can't touch those. So just to your point, this just went through, I think these are all the different centers that are in Pitkin County across the top. And then you can see school, nonprofit, school, town of Snowmass, school, local government. So it was a pretty underwhelming total of the amount that could be credited, and that's spread among a handful of users.
Greg?
Yeah, it just seems funny. The percentage saved is, in one case, is 10%, 9%, 28%. Is that, am I reading that wrong? 8% and 7.3%. That's not insignificant if it's a tax bill, is it? It's not a huge amount of money, but if I could save 28% or 11%, I'd probably do it.
It shows you their percent of savings. So Hobby Farm would be, what, $1,100?
$1,100 off of a total tax bill.
We were told by the owners of these
It's not worth the bother.
that they basically said, I mean, I think that we were contacted by one of the owners of a for-profit childcare center, hoping that we could see this bill through to the end, so that they could receive, because they're having financial challenges, and they think that their property tax bill is a substantial part of those challenges. They were hoping that this would basically get rid of a larger percentage of it. They said at these percentages,
Still won't help them.
they said it wasn't
Yeah.
going to help them.
Huh.
They're going to downsize and become an in-home childcare center, which it's hard to say whether this is the reason or if there are other reasons.
Sounds like it's just not the entire reason. And Tiny Pines, 28%, $690. So
So that's Tiny Pines rents in the ABC. So there's no provision in the bill that would require those savings to be
they
passed
may not get
on.
the savings.
No,
So they're
and
not.
I do believe they have a favorable lease right now from the McBrides, who wanted to support a child care center staying. It's where Aspen Sprouts was,
I was going to say.
and they wanted to preserve that space as a child care center.
Got it.
I think there was a lot of misconception when Senate Bill 2 from last session came through, that people saw that and they thought that it was the same as a full property tax exemption, as though they were a 501c3. And once you start to dig into it, it's just not quite that simple. So I've heard rumors of other governments talking about using Senate Bill 2, but to my knowledge, nobody's actually designated that specific area of local concern for anything. Probably for a lot of the same reasons.
There's some interesting things. People are considering it for interesting uses around housing, which again, if it looks like we can use this or we get kind of some more information from some other places, I think it's worth considering for some of our areas of local concern. I think all of us thought it was going to do more for the childcare sector than it looks like it's actually going to do. And for any childcares that may be watching, I mean, I think the 501c3 status is still kind of with the other bill that was passed in 22, that is that full exemption if folks are looking for that more significant property tax reduction.
Yeah, well, that particular part of Basalt, the school district and Crown Mountain are far bigger pressures on their tax bill than Pickens County.
Yeah, definitely.
For sure.
Yeah, I mean, some of these things could use some reform, for sure, but thanks. Appreciate you
Well,
following
just
that through. I know Patty and I have had lots of questions about
Just for
this.
clarification too, so if I have a property and part of it's residential, part of it technically is childcare, so commercial, I get taxed a percentage for the percentage of property that's used for residential, so we split the tax classification.
Yeah, it's not always split 50-50.
No, it depends on the how much is
Square
used by how
footage.
much.
Yes, but
Yeah.
that is correct.
Yeah, so there's also that tax savings when you have a residential on your commercial property.
Correct.
So, yeah. And then I don't know what happens when you become a home child care. If your whole property is then tax residential, it would be, I think. I don't think home child cares are tax commercial. The assessor's question, but I think
That's my understanding.
yeah. That's too bad.
I think it's a well-intended bill, and it just didn't quite go far enough in this case.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
You want to take that flash key? There's something good on it. So to follow through on a couple of the federal pieces that we've talked about in the past, defunding AmeriCorps seems like it's happened. The last number that I heard was $400 million has been removed, at 41% of their prior budget. This is the bad news part.
Yeah.
One of the bad news parts.
And 0.00001% of the federal budget?
We just spent it elsewhere already, I'm sure, but. The Medicaid advocacy, I'm sure y'all have followed. I didn't catch Sam and Lindsay's discussion. They probably are the ones to ask more about this, but the most recent estimates were that about 10.3 million would be estimated to lose coverage were these work requirements to go in place. I think there's 80 or 90 million current users of this system, so what does that turn on? 12-13%, something like that. Pretty big number. Of course, this is still pending. It went through the House, and we don't know what's going to happen in the Senate. So maybe that changes, maybe it doesn't change. It's a pretty grim picture.
Has there been any kind of a administrative process that's been set up as part of verifying work for people who have to show they're working X percent? Was it 40 hours in 2 weeks or something? Was the
80 hours a month, yep.
Yeah. Is there any system that's been set up to implement that?
Not that I've heard.
Interesting. Let's create a program we don't have a program for. Okay.
So I think in addition to those requirements, generally once you require reporting of any kind, you just lose some people who aren't able to complete that reporting, whether they're meeting the requirement or not. So I think that further factors into how do we keep track.
And then you'd have to hire some people on the government side to ensure that reporting is done and verify. So what is your end result savings? Other than indigent care or charitable care at local hospitals.
Well, and I think it's difficult to put a dollar value on the cost savings.
Yeah.
Because that's a question mark. So
big question mark.
I guess we see what the Senate does. There's some conversation that a lot of folks don't think the budget package goes far enough, and so there could be some even infighting among the majority there that could kill this in its current form just because they don't think it goes far enough. So it's a mess. The Shred and Core Act, both have been referred to a committee, but no action since the last time we spoke. Tax exempt bonds, the last number I saw, which was as of yesterday, would estimate $615 billion additional, or what it would cost the Treasury if we continue that program. But at least so far, hopefully nothing's happened there. That's all I can say. And unleashing American energy, well, we lost that one.
Is that drill, baby, drill?
Yeah, that was part of the changing the NEPA rules.
Yeah.
Additional pending advocacy. So I put a surface transportation reauthorization letter in your packets. And that came through our grant writers, DC Strategies, and with Linda Dupriest and our EOTC folks. And I think they were asking for some conversation and consideration from you all about that. And I think that is due May 30th. So I didn't put a post or a full slide. We didn't figure we needed to read that letter word by word, but I've submitted it into your packets for some consideration.
I think we need to send it, because in looking at it at a national level, NACO was very involved in this discussion, also supporting pretty much not our specific projects, but the underlying themes going on. So I think we need to send it on, and just to show our congressional delegation that we're supporting, and I think we have support from all three. One might be a little questionable, but I think having this letter go to all three is important.
Did everyone have the chance to read it? Do you have any thoughts?
I'm fine.
Same.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks.
I will get that on to some letterhead and sent off. The National Electric Vehicle Infrastructure. This was a new one to me that I hadn't heard of until this morning. Thanks, Greg, for bringing that up.
CC4CA.
CC4CA. Joan, I think, sent that out.
Yeah.
And, you know a lot more about it, Greg, and I think you kind of reworked that letter. I put a link to it here. I'm happy to open it, even though it's maybe a little long-winded for a slide.
Right. Basically, they sent a letter and said, would you consider sending this either to our representative or as an op-ed? And I thought, well, I wanted to run it by Levi. And then also I just rewrote it to make it more positive and less critical, because it's an opportunity to engage our Congressman Hurd in a positive way. And so that's what that letter and so they were really kind of saying this should happen really quickly if you all want to do it. And so I sent it to Levi this morning.
I'm not sure I saw it. I think you linked it to me in a text, but not.
Oh, I can
email.
share it, or if you've got it, maybe you should send it to everybody. That I don't know if that makes a difference or not. Probably doesn't, but if you've got it, you could just email it to the board.
Sure. Whatever's going to be easiest.
I don't support it as drafted.
Yeah, it's a draft, so.
Okay, I don't support it as drafted as a board letter. Specifically, calling another party short-sighted would not be in my.
Right, that might have been the first version, because I think we cut that out, didn't we?
There was the kind of blanket language that was sent to us, and then Greg rewrote.
I did a quick rewrite because I had the same response you did, Jeffrey.
Can we revisit it during open discussion tomorrow after everyone's had a chance to read
Yeah, let's
the
do it.
revised version?
I'll send that out tonight.
Does that work? Thank
Yeah.
you.
And Rep. Nagoose has some interest in Housing Fairness for Mountain Communities Act. I don't know if we spoke about this last time, but it's basically directing HUD to study challenges and propose alternatives to using AMI for a lot of those funding mechanisms, which I think has got a lot of value to it. So I spoke with Ashley. I should have made her stay and suffer through the rest. And we engaged April Long through the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition Board, mostly just because the makeup of that board touches so many different local governments. They're effectively looking for quotes from that board that CAST can put on their letter of advocacy saying, hey, this is something that would really benefit mountain communities. So just nothing that you all need to do. Just wanted you to know that we've kind of reached out to that board for some input on why AMI is not exactly working for a lot of our housing problems.
Yeah, we've talked about that for a long time. That'd be great.
Rep. Nagoose seems to really understand a lot of this stuff, so it's been pretty impressive to see him work so far.
Probably gonna be our next senator.
And that is the end of my bad news for today. I almost got you back on schedule. So I've got the full bill tracker there. That will have everything from vetoed bills to passed bills to everything that you could want. And I also put some of that stuff in your packet without...
And not one.
Yeah, not want. Without beating it to death here. Once again, I would remind us that our CCI legislative issues would be due to CCI. CCI legislative issues would be due on July 24th.
Okay.
And again, we've done the real estate transfer, tax, or fee for a long time. And then last year we did sustainable aviation fuel as well. And I'm open to any and all ideas beyond that.
Greg.
There's another one. We were approached to support the GORP Act, which Michael Bennett and Hickenlooper and Hurd all support and put in as a bipartisan effort. And it occurred to me that is something I would love to congratulate and support Representative Hurd. I think they're all bringing it forward. They support it, right?
The first I heard of that one was today also.
Right. Yeah. Okay. I guess we should check on it because I don't know exactly where it stands, but I'm under the impression that they've all they've joined together to introduce this. And so this is an opportunity I see to congratulate and thank Representative Hurd for doing something pretty bold.
I would need to see what the bill is, more specifically.
I forget the acronym. It's lost
Yeah.
in the alphabet soup right now.
Yeah.
There's info that Bennett's office sent out with
Yeah,
their press
but-
release about
Yeah, 'cause,
the
well, last time in
legislation.
talking with Senator Bennett's office it hadn't been introduced yet, so I was waiting to see the final configurations of the bill itself, so I'll have to try and
I'll
find it.
make sure Levi has it for when that does happen.
And I saw the letter that was attached for the GORP Act. Do you want me to send that out to the board also for open discussion tomorrow?
Yeah, please.
I probably won't have the time to read it, but, well, I'll try and get a hard copy. My schedule between now and getting to the meeting tomorrow is pretty crazy. And I will not have an iPad or a computer in front of me. So we'll figure it out.
Fair enough. And then just the upcoming member organization retreat and meeting schedule is the same as last time. And
Are you going to any of those, Levi?
yes, ma'am. I think I'm going to all of those.
All right, other questions for Levi?
Any
Are
other-
you just dying for this to sort of be over for a while?
Well, I thought I was going to get a pass at the end of the state session, but it's actually just gotten worse.
Gotten busier.
Well, though I will note, I was gonna bring this up in my board reports, they passed legislation essentially suspending interim committees to save the pennies that they spend on interim committee work.
Jeez.
So that should save you some time. It means the committee I sit on, the task force on tax policy, is suspended for this interim period until January of next year.
Hope
Big
Maybe
cost
there will be
savings.
less than you thought.
I hope they stick to it.
So that's the electricity of running the Zoom meetings they're
You
saying?
know, like some per diem expenses for legislators and study requests of the legislative council,
Coffee.
Coffee and donuts.
things like that. Most of our meetings were on Zoom, so nobody paid for anything for any of that, but staff time.
Exactly.
Take what we can get.
Well, thank you, Levi.
Welcome.
Thank
Please
you.
reach out as things come up. I'm happy to engage.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Let's move on to future agendas.
Come see my garden this weekend, Levi.
Is that a future agenda?
Yep, so,
Oh,
I
Yeah,
know.
but when are we going?
Yes.
Is
I know,
that- we have to
I
notice
thought-
this?
Sorry, I just had to get
I want to
it
go to her
before
garden
that.
at the end of the year where she's giving away
harvest.
carrots.
Yeah, what about the
I just
harvest?
want the sour, I want the sour cherries.
All right, okay. We're gonna
Yeah,
look at
so
future agendas.
more a bug to put in your ear. Eagle County followed up after the joint meeting about trying to get a date in September to do a picnic for the Three Meadows purchase. If you all could take a look, and I don't think we're going to do the overnight camping trip, but if you could bring some dates to the next OST joint meeting that you might be available, we'll try and get synced up with Eagle County and get
I
something
was
planned.
picturing, edible dates to the picnic. Like,
Hot
our
dogs,
task is to
beer,
bring
hot dogs.
dates. They're bringing
Oh,
things.
I apologize. No, dates that you may be, calendar dates that you may be able to attend.
You bring
in
dates
September.
with prosciutto and peanut butter.
Yes, exactly.
And we can talk about that. So it's more to put a bug in your ear, and that's all I have for you
Can
on
we do
future agendas.
What do you call it, a doodle poll or something? If there's 10 of us, or and if we add
Yeah, we
AVLT
may
to
end
that,
up doing that. We're going to see if we could get synced up a little bit there.
September, okay. That'd
Yep.
be a good time.
September, that's quite a ways away.
It's a lot of people to coordinate.
Okay, so will someone be sending out a doodle poll? Will Charlotte be trying to propose?
Well, we weren't
dates?
gonna, no, what we were hoping you would do is bring some dates in September that you would be available to spend a day up there.
Do people
and
want to
we'll-
look at their calendars now?
Sure, I
We
can
have
do
a
that. That's
fifth
easy.
Tuesday
Open my
on September 30th. I would propose that day.
That's probably Accra,
September.
that everybody
The
seems to.
fifth Tuesday of
Tuesday is the
September.
30th.
Accra is the is the last Tuesday of the month.
Okay, where are we now?
Well, we
But it's
went up
okay,
the
you guys
evening of the
schedule it
30th.
and.
Okay.
The evening, Acra's in the morning.
What day of the
We do
week are you
evening.
looking at?
That'd be a
We're trying to
Tuesday.
just get some dates together and see what
Any
dates
day of the
would,
week?
yeah. I'd probably avoid weekends would be my guess.
I-70 has been closed at Canyon Creek, which is probably why
October
people are
1st,
coming
a
over
first
the
Wednesday.
pass.
There was a horrible car accident on the highway.
What?
There was a horrible car
Sorry,
accident.
John.
Oh,
Maybe I
that's
wasn't
okay.
fully listening. Is this
They
a
were-
daytime trip, an evening gathering?
More of a daytime trip for a picnic, and they were looking more mid-September-ish in Eagle County. Sorry.
Like Wednesday the 17th?
That would work.
That's fine. As long as it's wrapped up in time to get to APSHA at 4.
Oh, so you've got a 4 o'clock. Could be nice to have.
We'll propose that and can discuss it a little bit more with open space. And that's all I've got for future agendas right now.
Okay. Other future agenda. Input.
No.
They seem light.
I have a future agenda
Interesting.
possibility. John, have you heard anything? I don't think any of us have, but I don't know for sure. as they're planning a CPW, maybe planning in Healthy Rivers and Streams, planning a ribbon cutting for the new put-in at Iron Bridge.
I do remember something being mentioned, but I
We
don't
had
know.
talked about it,
Yeah.
so if maybe we could follow up. It's beautiful. I think the landscaping is probably finished now. It'd be great to do it sometime when there's a lot of users coming and going, so they can see the effort that's been put in by local governments.
We also have CPW, a joint meeting with CPW as one of our running
Yeah.
requests. I don't know how that is coming together. You know,
I do
has
not
anyone
know.
reached out to
Yeah.
CPW to indicate
Um,
our interest to them?
Yeah, let me check with Brian. I think he was, because it was around bears. And there was,
We had a bunch of things. Some bears at the landfill, an update on wolves, Beaver Lake, Sam Caudill area, which is I think what
That's
you're
to put
talking
in.
about.
Yep.
So that'd be great. Thank you. Jeffrey, did you have something?
Just June 3rd, there's just typos on dates.
June 3rd.
I wanted to ask CPW about the Crown and what their elk census is shown on the Crown wildlife.
So it goes 1 o'clock and 1:30.
Oh yeah, 1 to 2:45 and then to
thank you.
3:30. Yeah.
That's, yeah.
Thank you. Do you see that, John? We got to clean up the June 3rd agenda, and we can talk
Open it
about
up
that
here so
tomorrow.
I don't-
Hopefully that's clean. We'll look at that tomorrow. Make sure it's cleaned up. Thank you. Okay. I think we had some discussion. This might be, John, for you and Kara to follow up with about potentially extending the Phillips Affordable Housing update, whether an hour is enough. time.
yeah, and I think we did that. It just wasn't captured before we
Great.
posted.
Thank you very much. Do. All right, yeah, our meetings are looking rather thin. I'm guessing we're gonna fill them in.
They'll fill out.
When does budget start, John?
Well, we're going to start here pretty soon in June, but we won't make y'all start until
Were you
this
gonna bring
fall.
back a proposal to us about an amended budget process? with a
Yes,
little more
yeah.
clarity?
Connie's working on that. So we're going to try and shorten it up for you.
And when is Newt gonna finally come to us?
That will probably be closer to the fall at this point, but they are working.
2 more bodies in every office 5 days a week. It's very simple.
Okay.
It's taken almost 3 years.
Okay, any other future agendas? All right.
When's our next airport update?
We do not have one scheduled for you yet. We're in the process of negotiating contracts, and as we get those finalized, we're going to get into a regular presentation with you. We're still working to hire that executive program manager through Jacobson Daniels, and that's the other piece we need in place. And then we'll get on a regular schedule with you.
Okay, we'll just wait.
And when are we having a discussion on ballot questions for the county to put on?
That we need to schedule. We need to
Because
get that
it's
scheduled.
June
yeah.
almost, and we need to have just, not a final, but just some intent notification to the clerk's office.
Well, and we flagged this for our joint meeting to discuss with.
The city,
city.
but I would like us to
No,
discuss.
I know.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's.
Well, Rachel had a good I'll get to that when I do ACRA, but.
All right. Any others? Future agendas. Okay. Let's go ahead and move on to board reports. Patty.
All right, ACRA today, Rachel did in director's comments a great kind of and I had a lot of information I had not heard about the potential for lots of ballot questions, mostly for sales tax going on in November, kind of across the board. Fire district, school district, child care. I mean, the list went on and on and on. Interesting issues with the school district, how they may exempt out part of their district and not tax. Yeah, because the city would have purview over the ballot language. If it was new information to me.
So I wonder if that the city has a sales tax that dedicates to the education foundation. Snowmass has a property tax, and I wonder if that's the carve out along those
I
jurisdictions.
don't know. The cities is, I mean, the school district is to backfill losses with a decreased enrollment, and also something about extending their, I don't know if it's their housing bonding or something. It was all, we knew they were thinking about it. Rachel had a lot of more in-depth information, so maybe in preparation for our joint meeting, I don't know. But it was a very interesting part of the ACRA discussion today. Diane Jackson and I just pretty much swapped stories about the airport. I mentioned the landfill, and I didn't bring up our potential ballot questions because we haven't really discussed them as a board as to what year and what we might want to put on. So ACRA also did a presentation today about this. It was a survey that they did. It was very interesting about users, people who work and live here, people who work but don't live here, and then people who are aware of the destination management plan. The numbers, they did a survey, and I can't remember the terminology they used, but sentiment, community sentiment about issues. And they did one in 2023, 22-23. So this was kind of an update with a little more new questions that were asked. It was pretty interesting. Once I get the slide deck or something, I'll probably pass it on to Ashley or Kara, maybe somebody. So that was most of the gist. The city also presented today their climate action and environmental efforts. They have a whole new program that they're kind of kicking out this year. You'll see signage around town. They have a lot of great swag, as the city always does. Like on the back of the street sweeper, it says, "This machine sucks all of the dirt out of the road so it doesn't get into the rivers and streams." So the word you see, though, is sucks. Everybody's attention as you're driving down the highway, you're going to try and figure out what it says after that. Yeah. Have you seen it? Yeah. So they're being very creative. So that was a very brief presentation today at ACRA. And there are 4 of us that will be going to Food and Wine Luncheon. Kelly just got a ticket today because they're going quickly. I know Francie's not going, but the rest of us, I think, are going to be there. A few more Food and Wine tickets are available for the whole event at different levels. They're really gearing up for it. I thought they might have some questions about selling out this year for Food and Wine, but looks like last year they were sold out pretty quickly, so I think there's a little bit of traveler preference this year as they may sell out the last minute. I think people are still hesitant about traveling, especially if they're coming from overseas, but we'll see what happens with that. So that event is coming up. ACRA's always the director's comments are really interesting to hear, and a lot of congratulations to John Rigney, who got a significant, what do you want to call it, new promotion with Ski Company, and Susan Cross from Snowmass. So that was that. NACO, not a lot going on there right now. They're really gearing up for the conference in Philly in July. And they're following, of course, the better, bigger, beautiful, I could add some words in there, Bill, but I won't add them in light of children might be watching. So that's going on there. I don't know if I was able to update on the Northwest COG Economic Development Summit. It was the 5th, so I don't know if I've had an opportunity. It was great. It was a great event. It was well attended. Encouraged people. I did the welcoming, very brief opening presentation and encouraged people to bring more friends along next time. This is it's a great venue for meeting and talking to people. It's very conducive to that. questions. It was good. I wish that April Long had a little more time to speak about housing. The first guy who spoke on Vail Housing kind of took over the whole time allotment. Laid back in his chair, you know, talking about it, and her stuff would have been very interesting to share in greater depth, but we'll work on that maybe for next year. It was nice of her to be over there. So that's always a great summit. It's a great event. Intermountain TPR, Brian and I have talked briefly, mostly about the surface build, the highway surface build and what's coming out of that. And any projects or issues we may want to bring forward for prioritization for whatever funding might be out there for transportation. We know that it's being cut at all levels, state and federal, so it's going to be a tough one to try and maintain or replace or construct or repair our roads and our bridges here in the next couple of years. So that's my updates.
Thank you. Francie.
Okay, I don't have anything for CAST, and fortunately Levi covers CCI so much better than I ever did. I do have an upcoming meeting with CPW. I met with Kevin Warner for a couple of hours the other morning, and he gave me the lowdown, and we talked a lot about how Pitkin can help the Forest Service, and that's why I'm supposed to meet with Gary this afternoon, but I might not make it since the highway I-70 was closed. These are cars all coming over Independence. So I don't know how long that's going to go on. Anyway, so after I talk to Gary, I'm sure Gary will get back to you all on what Kevin was talking about. And I don't want to say anything till I talk to Gary. However, the wolf situation has deteriorated. As we know, several of the British Columbia wolves have died. CPW thinks that it's normal attrition, but they are investigating the latest death. And then Brad Day lost 4 calves to the Copper Creek pack, and Crystal River has lost 2.
I'm sorry, who's
So
Brad
things
Day?
are heating up a little bit. What?
Who's Brad Day?
Brad Day is a rancher who has leases up near Jeffrey.
Okay.
So they know it was a Copper Creek pack, but that's about all I know about it. I imagine he'll apply for compensation. The compensation rates are very bizarre right now. We looked them up the other day, and they're really, really high. So I'm not quite sure, because we only had $1 million for compensation. So I don't know why they're so high. I don't know what that's about. It's very odd, but I'm going to talk to Matt about it when I meet with him. Matt has moved on to a higher position. He's still local, but the actual management for the upper part of this, or the lower part of this valley, is now John Groves, and Curtis is assuming more responsibility up at this end, and Matt is more sort of the whole area. So he's not quite the accessible contact he was before this change, but John is pretty accessible. Let's see. Do you want me to move right into the transportation thing, or do you want to wait until?
Well,
I know it's after everybody's report, but.
why don't you do River District?
Well, the
Any
River
Club
District
20?
has, and I'm sure you guys read about it, it has gone to the water court to ask for a change of beneficial use for the Shoshone water rights. They've presented, there won't be any decision, they have 120 days to make the decision. They are, of course, being opposed by Denver Water and Northern, and I'm not sure if anybody else is officially opposed. I know those two have. I guess we'll hear more tomorrow, probably. So that's about where that is. Our next meeting is in July for the board of directors, and it's in Steamboat. I don't really have anything else to say about the River District right now. And so that's it for me until the transportation.
Would you mind updating on the last APSHA board meeting since you covered while I was on vacation and we
Oh, God,
had the
let me see.
hearing
I
on
can't even
those?
remember. Oh,
Well,
my God.
I'll refresh your memory. It was the meeting to update the regulations, and we had discussion relative to like the lottery chances, the change
Oh,
to
well,
6
the-
months for
okay,
retirees.
yeah.
those kind
So I passed on what we had disagreed with, which were 2 items. We agreed with most of the proposed changes. So I passed on the 2 that we disagreed with, which was shortening the amount of, or lengthening the amount of time you have to be disabled before you can stay.
Be
in place.
disabled.
And, let me see if I can, and the other one was.
Renting out your place.
Increasing the number of chances you have depending on the amount of time you work. You've worked here, and so whether or not you get extra lottery entries.
Didn't we also have the one about being able to rent your place out if you were retired and for
Yes,
the
actually
6
we did.
months?
Yes, so we opposed those 3, I think. And pretty much everybody opposed the disability one. And, God, I'm having a hard time remembering this, I'm sorry.
The lottery one, I think the city did.
And, what was the other one I just mentioned? Sorry, I've been thinking
Sorry, I'm
about
looking up what our
this other thing.
comments were.
I think we were pretty much in sync with everybody else except for one of them. Honestly, Kelly, I've forgotten.
No, that's okay.
I'll try to retrieve it.
It was in the newspaper that the city also opposed the lottery one and the
The elimination of
retiree
the
one,
6
because they
month
felt that was a good opportunity
seasonal.
for seasonal housing.
Yeah.
Okay.
And,
Okay. Well, that's what I
and then we had an
Thank you.
exec session.
Thank you. I appreciate you covering that meeting while I was on vacation. I don't have a ton because Levi covered all of the legislative stuff. There was, I will say, I think this is maybe a request for help from staff. Colleague in Summit reached out and wondered if we are following rule changes regarding landfills. And I didn't have anything to pass along to her.
Methane gas, wasn't it?
Oh, let's see.
So did anybody else get the letter about the meeting for the landfill?
31 regulations regarding landfills in front of the Air Quality Control Commission. And I know we have some transition in our landfill
And where
staff,
was
so
this?
I'm wondering.
That you talked about that?
This was just a outreach I received from Summit County
Oh.
about how we may be reacting to these things that are regulatory changes regarding the landfill. And I have not been personally following them, but I think maybe we should see if they're significant for us.
What meeting did you get invited to?
I can wait and we'll talk about
Okay.
it during open discussion.
Okay. And then the Colorado River Basin Roundtable, Jeffrey also attended with me, so he may have some additional information. I missed the portion of that meeting where every meeting we get updates from like the hydrologists at the state level as well as the negotiators for the federal compact. The portion that I was able to attend, they did a really great presentation about aquatic nuisance species, talked about all of our work at RUDI, talked about their efforts at Highline Lake. They had to drain that whole reservoir, treat it with copper, and are refilling it this season. They talked about the programs at the state level to catch boats that are coming into Colorado, and who should be pulling over to be inspected and cleaned. And so that was super interesting. And we have a very enthusiastic aquatic nuisance species coordinator on the western slope.
What's his name?
Her name is Maddie, I think.
Oh, I was thinking of the CPW guy who presented to us on this back in March.
We had a presentation on that at the road
Madeline
district.
Baker.
Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
I see Levi joined us and has his hand up, so you must have been listening with burning ears. Do you have an answer to the question I posed or something else you heard, Levi?
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I do. So I've been talking with Brian Pettit and Tyler Carvel out of the landfill about the AQCC methane regulations coming to small
This
landfills.
methane.
And so our landfill, Tyler in particular, has requested party status so he can have a voice in that discussion. They had a status conference on May 19th that was a virtual conference, and then there will be some pre-hearing statements, and then the actual rulemaking will happen sometime in August. So Tyler's definitely on top of it, and it looks like the next conference is July 10th. So Tyler will plan to be there to discuss our organization's position as well as any concerns we might have. So I heard you mention that and thought you might like to know that he's on it.
Okay. I guess I'm looking to John. Do we ordinarily provide support from the attorney's office for joining as party status on these kind of things? I know I don't want to overextend Ryan any further, but I just want us to make sure that.
Yeah, not necessarily in a rulemaking process, but we would definitely involve the attorney's office as we get in. That the request just gives us a seat at the table. However, we typically will involve the attorney's office if we get to a point where we're interpreting proposed rule changes or maybe writing a challenge to those rule changes. So right now, this just gives us an opportunity to be part of that process, review the rules, see if it's very possible these rules may not even apply to us because of the size landfill we don't know yet.
Okay. Well, if we can flag that for an update as merited, that would be great. And that is all I have. I'll go to Jeffrey.
Yeah, I will, I guess I'll start, I'll finish on the roundtable
Thank you.
discussions. The major one, I'm happy to share the map. Both the south and the west are in extreme drought. For those online, Pitkin is in moderate and severe drought. So it's worth taking a look at that map. The issue if you're in extreme drought is that you are at a higher risk or elevated risk for large fires developing. So on that uplifting note, two other takeaways I think from the roundtable. One is Powell inflows are at 55% of average. And the update from, remind me, our Division 5 engineer from James, that he believes that both Shoshone and Cameo will come on in June and or July. So those are, and again, I'm happy to share that map. It's really informative in terms of current drought conditions. On CCI, I will echo the ditto in terms of Levi covered it, but to give you the preview, the conference is next week, and what's really interesting in terms of the agenda, it overlaps a lot with the discussions we had today. And so the highlights are federal policy changes, federal funding in flux. We're meeting the state demographer, so when Patty and I were in Gypsum, we met with the state economist, which is Greg Totten.
Summit, we were in
Summit,
Silverthorne.
thank you, Silverthorne. We met with Greg Totten, the state economist, so this will be with the state demographer. Water compacts is on the list. TIF, tax increment financing. There's an update from GOCO, and there's a huge amount of CCI dedicated to TANF, SNAP, and Medicaid federal funding. That's what I
Have
have.
fun. I can't wait to see how your gift baskets go.
And Patty's upset because Pitkin County is donating Hunter Thompson books to the CCI baskets.
No way.
Freak power. Jeffrey picked him out. I had
It's
nothing.
what
Oh, my word.
It's what happens when you ask the freshmen to fill the baskets.
Oh, my
Oh
goodness.
my God.
I think they'll be appreciated by some folks.
I bet he brings
Really want those counties to increase their anxiety about Pitkin County.
Awareness of our history.
only take one
I don't
stack.
claim that.
Don't
Small
take them all.
facet of our history.
Okay.
3 of them.
Oh,
great.
and
Sorry.
oh, sorry. And the most important thing is we're getting. Speaking of marketing, the aquatic invasive species are getting their own bumper stickers. It's pain in the AIS. ANS, aquatic, aquatic invasive species.
Nuisance.
Aquatic nuisance species.
I thought excitement,
Be more
agenda items.
Agenda item.
Agenda
I was thinking that
items.
too.
was funny.
It's a pain in the
Sometimes they are a
agenda item
pain.
summary?
All right.
If it does say AIS, I'll get one for everyone.
Right.
It is funny, but it's obtuse.
Okay,
Takes
me,
brain
am
work.
I up? Okay.
You're up.
We heard about the electric vehicle letter, which would be an opportunity to a reach out opportunity as an op-ed. We'll see that tomorrow with Levi, so stay tuned on that. CORE, anything I do with CORE at this point is basically private. I might host a party for CORE this summer up at the house. QQ, I know we're going to have a meeting tomorrow, an executive meeting at QQ to talk about potential legal fund ask, and that they're concerned that the legal fund at QQ may not be large enough or may need to be supplemented somehow. So we're going to get an ask to all the members. I don't know what the amount is or any more details, but I'll come back with that. On June 6th, I've been asked by QQ to go down and represent QQ to receive an award from the Sonoran Institute in Denver on the 6th of June, and I'm planning to do that. And I've told them I don't know enough about what the Sonoran Institute is, why they're giving QQ an award, so I'll be getting briefed on that tomorrow as well. Board of Health, I've got the Board of Health report in up here. Salient points are, measles cases are, seem to be growing. They're rising nationally, mostly in Texas. Colorado does have 5 confirmed cases still, or at this point. What else do we have up here of interest? There's talk about rabies education. Public Health will be putting stuff out on this. But we haven't had a Board of Health meeting since we last reported.
May I ask a question? Or maybe a
Please.
question for Board of Health? I'd be curious if there's any catch-up on vaccination rates from the COVID declines. My pediatrician seems to think so, but
You mean how we're doing with respiratory illnesses, or?
with pediatric vaccination
More people are
rates,
getting vaccinated
yes.
now after the COVID scare of vaccinations, et
Right.
cetera.
Good question. We can ask Jordana to let us talk to us about that. I don't see that in her last dispatch. RAFTA, as you know, has the No Fair program, which is getting a lot of positive public attention as we approach that for the fall. Their new bus schedule opens up in a couple of days for the summer, so things are going well. I think they're already seeing an uptick in activity there with more tourist stuff, actually. RUWAPA, the May meeting for RUWAPA was canceled, but it was nice to hear about your aquatic nuisance species. I was going to just bring that up. That RUDI has been very successful. We've been lucky to avoid it through rigorous examinations and then cleanings of boats as they come in. And the gentleman who came from CPW to tell us the whole story about how they had to clean out the reservoir in Fruta. It was fascinating what they had to do to try to eliminate the aquatic nuisance species, and hopefully we don't have to do that ever at Rudi.
Oh my God, that would be.
And that's all I've got for you.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Is RUWAPA the same thing as Rudi Water?
I know,
Or
I
do
see
you
it
get
twice
credit
on
for
here.
both?
I know that the list of
Delete
the
that.
list of memberships
You get all the
include.
credit for both of those.
I do. I do attend both of those.
Do you remember you're still on that board
Get an
this
extra
year? 'Cause
check
last
next
year
to
you
your
didn't.
name.
No, he was
forgot I
the
was
chair,
chair.
but I was the one that was appointed. That was what was
It
hilarious.
looks like you're
about
on
last
an
year.
extra.
I'm the
board.
chair of the RUWAPA board and the Rudi Water and Power Authority.
Just so you know, guys, I'm gonna give Jeffrey a lot of credit here. He goes to all of these meetings whether or not the appointed person is there because he likes.
He's good at this.
I did that my
to go to
first year
meetings.
Yeah,
too.
he's absorbing. He's like a sponge. It's great.
Okay. Thank you for everyone's dedication to all these additional boards and representation around the state. All right, Transportation Coalition updates. I will note, I feel like we also have carved out time for you guys, but I can't remember when that is. So maybe we'll
Yeah,
just have
and
to be
It's in the next agenda.
thoughtful about whether we're checking in every 2 weeks or checking in on these quarterly,
believe
on
it's
these
on the
board
10th.
reports.
Are you saying
And I'll
you'd like
s-
to wait and not hear this?
No, I can hear it. I just am noticing that in our future agendas, we've also had set aside specific time on the agenda, separate from board reports for it. And so,
Oh, I thought that's what this was.
That's correct,
Yeah.
Kelly. And our understanding was that the board wanted just an update after each of the coalition meetings. If that's not the case, we can adjust any way you want.
all right, well, we'll
Well,
figure out what we want, since this is our first one.
Well,
Okay.
June 10th is what's on the agenda.
I had one before, when you were gone.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I thought we were gonna do separate time, and it was gonna be the Tuesday following their meeting schedule, and I don't know what your meeting schedule is.
That's where we are.
Yeah, I know, but I didn't know you changed some of the meetings around a little bit from, it's not every, let's just schedule the Tuesday after your meetings, because I know some of them changed around in July, for example. They weren't every other, so we don't see what your meeting schedule is, so.
Yeah, please, so you can communicate that with me, and I'll make sure it gets time
This is
set
the
aside.
Tuesday after our last meeting.
Perfect, go ahead.
Okay. Well, we heard from Jacobs again and two other people whose names I don't have in front of me right now, but they were really quite incredible. Jacobs was really just there as a resource. And these other people, do you remember their names, Greg?
I'll bring it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and they started out with congratulating Aspen. They said Aspen, they didn't say Upper Valley or Pickett County, they said Aspen. Aspen has received quite a few awards on their work on traffic mitigation and dealing with what we consider congestion, and that there are two ways to approach changing the situation. One's with a stick and one's with a carrot. And they talked about the things that have been done, and that Aspen's pretty much used up all the carrots, and now it's time for the stick. And so then they transferred into a discussion of the Aspen Institute sponsored Upper Valley Mobility Report, which started in 2016 and was published in 2017, and reminded us of the 5 major points that were recommended by that, which were presented to us, I think, in 2020, had a meeting that we had here. So it includes ride share, which we've talked about a lot, with an app so that you arrange ahead of time to share a ride with somebody. And then ride hailing, which is like the Downtowner and the Basalt, I think theirs might be called Downtowner too, I can't remember, but or Uber, where you make an arrangement for somebody to pick you up separately from rideshare. Rideshare is peers, ride hailing is more of a professional approach. That's 2 of them. The BRT enhancement for RAFTA, congestion pricing, which has sort of dynamic road and parking pricing, and then the HOV lane enforcement. And we discussed those different recommendations, as well as examples of parking strategies in other places. The airport transit connectivity was also presented in 2017 by this group. And then we talked about transit-oriented affordable housing, which they discussed as probably not something that we should be pursuing, because it actually increases the amount of people that would be moving to a certain area and then increase traffic. They talked about airport transit connectivity, which we know we're working on. Light rail, which nobody talks about seriously anymore, which is too bad. They didn't really talk about the mountain-to-mountain connection, which was one of the recommendations from the mobility report, which would be like a gondola from Buttermilk to Snowmass and the Highlands. Hopefully we'll talk about that in a future meeting. And increased highway capacity for vehicles. So that led to a discussion of induced traffic. And that was a really interesting discussion about how if you build more lanes, which we did, when was that, like 15, 20 years ago, when we added more lanes? And that initially it reduces the traffic. And so, but before that was done, people are saying, oh my God, there's so much traffic, it takes so long to get to Aspen, I'm not gonna drive. I'm gonna take the bus, so I'm going to change my job, move to Carbondale, whatever. But then when they added the lanes, the first thing it does is it decreases traffic. And then people are like, oh, well, the traffic's not so bad. Maybe I'll drive to Aspen after all. So that's induced traffic. So by adding the extra lanes, you've induced additional traffic. And within a few years, you're back where you started with the same amount of commute time, the same congestion. So that was the meeting in short. One of the things that came out of this was sort of a pronouncement, somewhat of a pronouncement by the four people who have sort of put this together, and that is that they're not intending to take a stand on the entrance to Aspen. At least that's their intention. Now there's like 20 other people who are involved as well who might have a different feeling, but they sort of made that clear. And what do you think? Anything else?
Well, the thing that I saw is that I took away from it is there was a lot of discussion about various solutions, and they came to us in 2017. We've seen them all, and it came to EOTC, and I heard some frustration expressed because nothing has come of it, right? Nothing happened. But the thing is, all of these solutions require really granular elements to be discussed and sorted out, and that's what didn't happen
In
2017. And so I think what they're thinking is, okay, let's come back and drill down and give them something more to work with. And this is my interpretation of it, because they were saying we want to bring this back because we didn't think it got enough scrutiny. And there just wasn't enough information. If they say, well, ride sharing is the solution, that's not going to do it for an awful lot of people. So what would make ride sharing work? What would make HOV lane work better? Enforcement, but what makes enforcement work? It's just, there's so many more details. So I have a feeling that the point of all this is, one, let's recap what the studies have said, which is what we've really done in the first. Well, I only went to the second meeting, so in the first two, I think it's kind of a reorientation, and then I think it's going to be, okay, let's drill down and try to actually come up with solutions that are things that everyone can sink their teeth into.
And we did look at examples from Europe and other communities that were presented by these two people. That was really interesting, actually, and like this whole community that is college-oriented, that has no public driving in it at all. Everything drives in, like some of the towns in Europe, and they presented different things, different congestion pricing ideas. It was a really interesting discussion because everybody at the meeting talked at one point or another, which is really great. And so there were very specific solution ideas for each of these. So it's definitely getting more detailed, as Greg said, and it's pretty interesting. But I think the main point of last week's meeting is that it isn't one thing. There is no magic bullet, you know.
And I think the intent, they've said over and over, it's intended to be complementary and supportive of what we're all doing with the OTC.
Yeah. And the BRT enhancement has definitely occurred in the last 7 years, and it's considerably more than it was 7 years ago. And HOV lane enforcement, I don't know, we'll see where that goes, but for those of us who commute, I don't see the HOV lane as crowded ever. So why are we enforcing it? You know, that just seems kind of weird. Doesn't seem to me that it really affects the congestion at all, but we'll find out. We'll talk about that probably at future meetings too. And
I guess if I could raise just a thought, food for thought is, you know, some of what I see as hurdles to these solutions.
what?
Hurdles to the implementation of these solutions is a kind of clear understanding of the community acceptance for adoption. And, I don't know if this group will wrestle with that
I
at
hope
all.
they do.
But
Let's hope they do.
like we have theoretically excellent solutions that have implementation challenges, which are solvable problems, right? But I think a big piece that we don't know is kind of the community willingness for the uptake to that. And, that came up, I think, when we talked about congestion pricing a bit and like what the, how the state is a partner in that decision and what that means to get their support on board. And, how we would have to sort of demonstrate as a community a willingness as a community to get these things on board. So, I think if that is part of your scope of conversation, I think it'd be a really meaningful thing to talk about and at least
I think
plan
it will
out
be.
or deliver to the broader community or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's the intent. Totally, you've nailed it. Let's figure out what the details, the devil in the details in all this.
We did discuss this, any possible equity issues with congestion pricing, and they gave examples of how other communities structure it so that it doesn't become inequitable and doesn't just let the wealthy drive on in because they don't care how much they pay, that sort of thing.
You have to show your tax returns before you leave Brush Creek. I don't know how you would.
Well,
But anyway,
that's what the conversation's about.
So-
It's my understanding too that there were some things that the state wasn't authorized or allowed to do, et cetera. And I think the problem is that some of the things could have been done after the Aspen Institute 18 months of work, and they didn't get done.
Right.
Nobody further pursued them, and that could have, like the rideshare thing, could have been set up on a computer app.
Years ago.
Yeah, and again, my concern is the coming back to who to help fund these things when we're already looking at trying to fund things. And the increases in the bus service have been great, but again, the issue is more buses, more bus drivers, more housing for bus drivers, parking lots so people can get onto the bus. I just can't figure, and did growth come up? I mean, I think one of the reasons why our 4 lanes in and out now are packed is because there's been Upper Valley growth. And if anything, it would be nice to see the city come into play with construction management plans that limited how many parking spaces they give to a construction company in the West End, where, it's illegal to park on county roads, so it's kind of easy for us to have no parking in our construction management plans. But there has to be a way for the city to say, we're only gonna give you X amount. I don't know if this came up. This is something I think should be part of your discussion. The city should have that in their construction management plan, rather than just saying, oh, just pay for more parking in the West End for your construction project. That's okay, and then people drive in single vehicles rather than carpooling, which you see the carpooling vans from Hanson and Stutzman Gerbaz and those companies, R.A. Nelson, who, because they're coming through Aspen and they're probably going to a site in Pickens County, or they're in Aspen and dropping people off. I don't know, but I think that's just something that could happen overnight if the city wrote that into their construction management
Absolutely,
plan.
with no money, or very little money.
Well, they wouldn't be making as much money from people having to pay for parking places, because they charge a pretty penny for those parking spot for a construction project.
They do.
But yeah, and the people who pay for them, they just pass it on to the owner of the property, and
Just where it should be.
yeah, but in the meantime, it's those cars that are causing a lot of the construction. It did come up in Accra today too about driving into town now that in the off season, how there's still traffic.
It's been
And
unbelievable.
with the school today, somebody said, well, the seniors, it was, the school superintendent there, and he said, well, the seniors couldn't drive today, and you know what? We still had traffic at the roundabout at 8 o'clock in the morning. So, yeah, so you have to, I can't wait to see what our traffic numbers, and I hope that this coalition will really look at those, which show you where they're actually coming from and what types of vehicles are using, because I think our new numbers are going to be very, very interesting, because we've spread out where we're counting and what we're counting. And Francie, you said something about the percentage that they say are coming in over Power Plant Road.
15%.
But did they stop those people and say, do you live on Cemetery Lane and are you going to the
Just who stopped them?
Well, whoever, Jacobs, who was the,
Jacobs Engineering.
yeah. How do they know where those people were coming and going from? Were they, they're just saying it was commuters, but chances are a lot of people live on Cemetery Lane who may be going to the Institute or maybe going to the Episcopal
Well,
Church.
when you watch people turn off of Highway 82, most of that traffic is commuters. Their line piles up on Highway 82 to make the left turn and go over to McLean's. So,
I'm talking about the ones that use Power Plant Road.
I know.
One and the same.
That's
Go
the
up,
end of
under and
McLean's.
down.
Yeah. Those
Yeah.
are the people who are coming across McLean's. And
Or coming from, there's a population that lives at Red Butte, that lives at Cemetery Lane and along the golf course that also has to come in and out of town.
right, I
Yeah.
know. So what are you saying? I'm not sure what you're saying.
They're not commuters. They live here and they have functions. They may not be working, but they may be going to the doctor's office or going to the Episcopal Church, which is in the West End. So I don't
Be the
think
more
that data has
granular
been flushed
data.
out enough.
They
that
are
we can
commuting
get.
into Aspen.
Never mind.
Okay, well, thank you for the update. Again, I think the request of the board was to be able to have some input on any decision-making that is
Oh, yeah, we
presented
have
to
a-
you
No
all.
decisions of, yeah, it'll be a while.
Okay, thank you. Is there any open discussion? John?
Yeah, I've got a couple items for you. Just to note that Charlotte emailed out a list of all the applicants and interview dates for Healthy Rivers and Streams. I know not everyone's able to be at all the interviews, but hoping you get a chance to go back and look at those. And with the upcoming interviews, maybe we can make a decision next
Can I
Tuesday.
ask a question about that letter, though? Because it said these are replacing Wendy in September. But I thought this person was going to be replacing Wendy immediately, and Bill Yocums is resigning in September, and that's another placement.
I'll have to check on that. Yeah, I
Pretty
can't
sure I'm
answer
right
that. Yeah. And then, so yeah, if you get a chance, that'd be great. Only other open discussion item, exciting announcement is Diane Jackson has been promoted into the airport director position and has accepted, and
Press release
that
going
is
out.
effective. And we have a press release going out now that I've told you yes.
That's great,
Yeah,
thank you.
so,
I love when things work out like that.
yeah.
I have one, and I don't know if the board's aware of this. It's not good news, it's sad news about the passing of Tim McFlynn.
Oh, really?
Tim McFlynn passed away
Oh, I
Saturday
didn't
morning
know that.
early with his family. Dale sent me a text message. Dale's having a very difficult time.
Yeah.
They're asking at our joint meeting to do, in memory of Tim. Dale's drafting a letter. Donna's going to be here and asking any members of the board, either board, who want to say a few words on Tim's behalf.
Boy, that was, I just saw him
Was he
like a
ill?
couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, his health
Out
had
to
been
dinner.
failing, and he was with family at home. And there's going to be a memorial in August, probably at the Harvey Ranch. They're still,
At which ranch?
Harvey
Oh.
Ranch.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, really, it was just a little while ago. He was
Yeah.
out to dinner at Fat Tie.
I wanted the board to know.
Thank you for
so
telling me.
Thanks for sharing.
I just checked with Dale to make sure it was public knowledge, and it is, so I was okay to bring it up.
Thanks, Patty. Our hearts to the family. Thank you. Is there other open discussion items? Francie, did you have something?
So I got this letter from, I don't know if I can find it really fast, but the Colorado Bear Coalition, here it is. And it's this discussion of a meeting that's coming up on June 16th, where she's got me down as being a speaker like 3 times. And
You're out
the
of town.
email
Lot to
went
say.
to Matt, Curtis, John, all from CBW, Daniela, I don't know who that is, my son Ty, I think as part of the Wildlife Commission, and it's from Melinda Marcus, who's the Colorado Bear Coalition, and it's about bears at the Pickens County landfill. And
haven't
instead of an invitation, it's like, below are draft agenda for our meeting on May 29th at 2 p.m. And then a thing about a meeting on June 16th. I mean, I don't know anything about that. So, do you?
I sent an email. Brian's on vacation, but I sent an email out because no, I do not know anything about it. I expect that staff would have let me know if that was a
Right.
discussion we were
I never
involved in.
heard anything from them. That's funny.
Yeah, so I thought I saw June 16th. Now I'm just seeing May 29th.
Because you're out on
What are you
June
gonna wear?
16th.
It's a Zoom meeting,
Oh,
but then there's one at the Pitkin County landfill.
Oh,
I
that's,
think. I don't know what the hell I'm looking at, to tell you the truth.
well, have we had our discussion with CPW about the bears at the landfill yet? So
Well,
what would we
we've
be
had
discussing?
one very robust one.
Well, we did have one here.
Yeah, ways back, but they're coming back to us again to discuss it. So we haven't talked about it as a board to present it at the Bear Coalition meeting.
I don't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Well, we did make some decisions. We decided not to spend all the money to electrify, 8-foot fencing around the landfill. As far as
Yeah, there was
our last
concern that it would
direction
drive the bears.
to that.
To Aspen Village, where we'd have.
Yes, and we also made a decision not to euthanize them because we didn't want to be responsible for euthanizing a bunch of bears.
But we didn't take up Kelly's suggestion.
it's called abdicating
Which is
responsibility.
still the best one.
Which, your decision was?
Birth control. Shoot them with birth control.
They should do that too, I agree.
Oh, yeah, here it is. Meeting at 10 a.m. on June 16th at the Pitkin County landfill. In addition to the invitations to the May 29th meeting, we recommend inviting the landfill manager and
To the landfill to have a meeting.
Sheriff Emily Casebeer. I mean, I don't know what this
Emily's
is.
our wildlife person.
I'm sending it to you.
Okay.
Done.
No one else
don't
has
need to talk
any
about it.
more information than you have, Francie.
And you're going
Any
to invite the
other-
landfill director to a meeting at the landfill, that the landfill director is,
This is too, we don't need to all be talking about this.
Is,
Doesn't make sense.
Is it okay if we move on if there's any other open discussion? Greg?
I just wanted to say, I saw the article in the paper about the outdoor ed trying to create an endowment for the outdoor ed program, and the Bernie Posbeck was a favorite teacher at our schools. Patty, I'm sure, remembers him.
I didn't go to school here, but I knew Bernie.
You know Bernie,
Through
yeah.
the Clapper family.
Yeah. And they're going to try and get anybody who's ever been touched by outdoor ed or been on it or been influenced by it to donate $24 or something like
Yeah,
that.
$24.
Yeah, small donation.
And the
And I just think it's a great thing, and I just wanted to bring it up that, this is the community trying to rally support for something that was incredibly influential in the upbringing of every kid who goes through eighth grade, or outdoor ed in general. It's the entire outdoor ed program. And I'm just so grateful for it. I'm going to support them, and I encourage everyone else in the community to do that also. It's
Patty?
Yeah,
important
do
stuff.
we have a website or a place where we can contribute? Maybe you could find that out for tomorrow.
It's Aspen Community
How about you
Foundation.
add that to your commissioner comments at the top of the hour?
And the $24.
I just brought it up now.
The $24 stands for the 24 hours you spend on your solo on 8th grade outdoor ed.
Great. More people may hear it though during commissioner
Oh,
comments.
you think I should
if
do
you
it
wanna-
then? Oh, I'll do it then too. Why not?
I thought it was a good suggestion, Yes, Francie.
So Kara said she was going to bring back this Tuesday what she had found out about the Carbondale swimming pool, but it is Tuesday, and
There's no care.
Kara's not here, so do you know about that?
We thought Rye had said that there was no,
There was no problem with
Impediment.
having the funds go.
Kara was
But she
gonna-
was going to look at what other organizations have asked for help from that fund.
Well, us. It was the Healthy Rivers and Streams, so it's us asking for help. It's Pitkin County wanting to use money from that fund for the river park in Basalt. She wasn't sure what the amount was,
And she thought there
except,
might be others, and that's what she was looking into.
yeah, but the big one was our ask.
I'm gonna give it another minute and then try and get us out of here.
Another minute for
we're gonna, for John to receive.
looking- Oh, he's
kind
waiting.
of
Can
I
get an
just
update?
update you for
relative
tomorrow?
to- Yes, please, Patty.
Tomorrow, as the board knows, I have an important graduation to go to. I will
Yes.
be here when I can. So hopefully, I think the issue was the resolution on the entrance to Aspen. So that I know has been moved further down the agenda, but the agenda, I don't know what my time frame will be, and I'll just try and let Kelly know.
I'll text ya.
Thank you.
We had a conversation about this, but from what I am recalling is not going to be very informative. It did not sound like the town itself had a capital campaign, but there's a group that has a,
Carbondale?
yeah.
The town itself has a capital campaign.
Is this for the pool? No?
I'll talk to Carol
Okay.
about it.
All right. We don't need to resolve this right this moment. So let's get better prepared and bring that conversation back. And with that, I'm going to adjourn our work session and see you all tomorrow for our regular session. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Grassroots.
Looks like